Hmm? Ah!
They'll give you ships and soldiers, and they'll own you forever. Moving carefully is the hard way, but it's the right way.
And if I'd listened to that advice outside the gates of Karth, we'd all be dead by now.
I know the opportunity before you seems like the last you'll ever have, but you must
Do not speak to me like I'm a child.
I only want
What do you want? Tell me.
to see you on the Iron Throne.
Why?
You have a good claim, a title, a birthright. But you have something more than that. You may cover it up and deny it, but you have a gentle heart. You would not only be respected and feared, you would be loved. Someone who can rule and should rule. Centuries come and go without a person like that coming into the world. There are times when I look at you and I still can't believe you're real.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Lord Sterling, Ser Duncan, champion of the Constitution.
And I'm Lady Kristin of House McWegglebergino, Queen of the Undead.
And this is Game of Microphones, episode 57.
Yahoo! On this episode of our series, Rewatch, we are covering Game of Thrones Season 2, Episode 5, The Ghost of Harrenhal.
It's true. And for anybody who's unaware, this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So that means we will be covering potentially all episodes up to the current time. That's until Season 7, Episode 7. So if you're not caught up, you still have time to get murdered by a shadow demon, so you don't have to listen.
Or thrown over the castle walls by Jakar. Oh my gosh, Jack and Hagar. This is how tired I am. I apologize in advance. Or get thrown over the castle walls by Jack and Hagar. Okay.
There you go. So this is your spoiler warning. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Oh, I really like that soundbite, by the way.
Oh, you do the spoiler thing?
I think it's great.
Nice, good. I wasn't sure if if it would be too much, or whatever.
Oh, just to let you know, what I thought was cool, because I just listened to part of our podcast. I was testing it out on my Echo Dot, and all I have to do is say, play the Game of Microphones podcast.
No way.
And the Echo Dot says, please wait while I get the latest episode of Game of Microphones podcast. And all of a sudden I hear, and I'm like, yay!
That's so cool. I'm leaving that in the episode too.
Okay. Perfect.
So let's jump right into it. You want to start this week, Kristin?
Sure.
Awesome.
I really noticed the theme of pride this episode and kind of how it played its part.
Cool.
In the character arcs and the demise of a lot of our characters. So one of the main ones was Renly's pride, which I believe caused his death. He was very prideful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, of how much better he was than his brother and how he had a bigger army and he had a bigger dick, basically.
And he had friends.
Right, exactly. The number 2 thing that we see with pride is Stannis. I think that Stannis's pride blinds him to the dangers of blood magic. He's so intent and he has such tunnel vision that he is the one, that he is the prince that was promised. And, he's basically drinking his own Kool-Aid. And he's so sure about it that he doesn't see what it's taking for him to do what he thinks that he's supposed to do.
Right.
And I think that pride eventually causes his downfall. And we kind of start to see it now with him killing his own brother to get his brother's armies and to get a win. And for somebody who's so proud and so rigid in honor and the rules and what is supposed to be what, he was willing to kind of stoop this low just to prove that he could win and that he was the better one.
Davos has a great line sort of trying to put it in perspective for him too, where he says, he's warning them about, he's trying to talk to him about how he saw the shadow demon, and Stannis is like, listen, we're not talking about it. Like, just shut your fucking face, Uncle Fucker. And, and Davos is like, listen, dude, we got to talk about this. And he shuts him down, and he's like, listen, nothing is worth what this will cost you, not even the Iron Throne. And that,
right.
I think that directly foreshadows what the greatest cost of all, which ends up being Shireen.
Oh, yes. There are worse things than death. You are right.
Yeah, and his wife as well, Selyse, but mostly Shireen. Like, Stannis, I think once he realizes what the fuck happened, he would do anything to get Shireen back. She's the princess of House Baratheon, and she's special, man. So it's just tragic that Davos saw this coming a mile away, that the cost would be too high. He wasn't aware of what the cost would be, but he knew that it was going to be bad. And it's just too bad.
That spidey sense that you get,
Yeah,
you sit there and you're like, oh, no, this is wrong. I don't know why, but I know that this is wrong.
Yeah, and Davos definitely got that spidey sense. You could see the horror in his face we talked about last week as that shadow demon was wrenching its way out of Melisandre. And he's crouching against the wall there.
I wonder if it would have been different if Stannis would have seen
that himself.
Because he didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, I don't think he could have physically seen it himself, because I think he was asleep in control of the shadow demon in his dream.
Oh, gross. But yeah.
Yeah, right? Because like he isn't.
You're right.
Isn't that the vibe that you sort of got? Because it's Stannis. Like the demon is Stannis. So he goes to sleep, dreams of killing Renly, and wakes up, and it's done. Basically, like he did it, but he never left his tent. And he admits it to Brienne when she confronts him. She says, "You killed Renly, didn't you?" And he's like, "Yep, I did it. I'm a bastard. I killed my brother, killed my daughter,
killed my wife.
Yeah, killed my brother-in-law, burned him at the stake.
Had your kids, had your wife.
Had your kids, had your wife, had your kids, had your wife, had your kids, had your wife, and had your husband, 'cause they're raping everybody out here.
You don't have to come and confess. We looking for you." You can run and tell that, homeboy.
Oh, look at you, buddy.
I fucking love that song.
You are thug life. Man. So another example of the pride theme in this episode would be Cersei's pride. I think that it objects her understanding of the wildfire. She's so prideful about being the queen regent, I don't know if she's still the queen. She's the queen regent.
I think she's the queen regent at this point.
Okay. So, her and Tyrion are so busy trying to prove who the better sibling is for Daddy that they don't understand that there's a madman on the throne and there's wildfire under the city, and, the whole town is basically in pure hatred for them, but they have this sense of pride. They're proud to be a Lannister, proud to be, in the Red Keep, proud to be of this higher power. And as long as Tywin is gone, Cersei is, pretty what's the word I'm looking for? She's just, I think that her pride, basically, I just think that her pride is getting in the way of what she's trying to accomplish, which is just to be the favorite kid, I think, at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, her pride is blinding her strategy, essentially.
And then if you could even go deeper with this whole theme of pride, with Theon's pride, and what it's doing to his devolvement as a character, what he is about to do to the Starks, what he's trying to prove to his father, what he cannot accomplish with his one tiny little sea bitch ship.
Right. And to add to your point, I I have a point that is like yin. It's like yang to your yin here. We can talk about how pride can be used to manipulate or to guide these leaders in the way that they behave. Like you said, Cersei's pride is sort of clouding her judgment. In contrast to that, we have a couple examples of leaders heeding the advice of their council in this episode, and based on arguments that are centered around our leader's pride. For instance, we have Stannis, who's planning on invading King's Landing and sieging the city and entering through Blackwater Bay. And Davos is asking him, are you planning on bringing Melisandre? And he's like, yeah, she's the Red Woman. She's helping him with everything. And he's like, listen, you just won all your bannermen from Renly. Don't lose them to her.
Right.
You want to be the leader. You want to be the person who's like making the moves. You don't want to have her stealing your glory or have people thinking that that she's whispering in your ear and controlling her. He plays to Stannis' sense of pride and Stannis' desire to be the leader, and helps him choose to keep himself in that position and not be as easily, mistaken as being in the pocket of Melisandre by leaving her behind.
Really good point.
So Stannis, in order to maintain his pride and his leadership, decides to leave Melisandre behind and tackle this himself. So there we have Stannis' pride motivating him to listen to Davos here, and we have an example of a leader heeding wise counsel from their hand, essentially, right? He's not at the hand yet, but. And then a second example of that, we have Daenerys in this episode.
She was my next point. Yay!
Perfect. Okay, so you go first with your angle.
No, you're on a roll.
Okay. So she is. She's presented with a couple options in this episode. I love all the Karth stuff. I think it's really interesting and beautiful looking and everything like that. Karth we'll talk about Karth more. But she's talking with Xaro Zoandaxis, and he brings her to check out his safe, and that's just like the coolest shit in the world. I want that safe.
Yeah, but he doesn't open it.
Right, yeah, he doesn't open it because it's all front. He's playing the banking game. This is like what central bankers do. They'll, pretend they have...
I have all this money.
Reserves, yeah, and create false confidence in markets so that they can manipulate via lending and, borrowing and whatnot. So Xaro basically asks her to marry him, saying, I have the resources, you have the dragons, together would be unstoppable. She had previously just explained how they were comparing each other, and she was like, well, we're both conquerors, but I'm just more ambitious, and then he comes back at her and he's like, oh, so maybe I'm more ambitious than you thought I was, which was cool. But at that moment I'm like, don't trust him. If he's ambitious, that means he sees you as a means to an end and potentially as an obstacle to his total end, which means you could marry him and then he could fucking kill you in your sleep or something and take the dragons.
He thinks that because she's a little girl that he can completely manipulate her and get her to do what he wants her to do. That's what Sending the Dress was all about.
Absolutely, yeah.
They
buying
totally matched each other. Like they were a couple.
Yeah.
That was on purpose.
Yes. Good point. So then she's talking with Jorah. And man, I love Jorah, man. Ian Glenn is just great. I love the character Jorah and his performances. It's just Agreed. I just can't get enough of him. So they're talking, and he's pointing out to her that that sometimes the easy way isn't the best way. Especially in a position like this, if you're a leader, you don't want to be given power like Joffrey, or nobody respects that when you're just given something. You want to earn it yourself and own it, and people respect that and will acknowledge that you're worthy in that case. Studio edit. This concept also applies to Theon in this episode, as we see him talk about this exact subject with Dagmar Cleftjaw about earning his place as an Ironborn and earning the respect of his crew. And it also applies to Jon, which we discuss shortly. Back to the show. And so he plays to her pride and tells her that, you don't want to... if you borrow all this money from Xaro Zoandaxis, he owns you. The people never give stuff like this in exchange for nothing. They always expect something. They're going to get something. That's how they succeed. And he's going to own you. And so he plays her like we were saying, her sense of pride, and she decides that she wants to go the honorable route and earn it herself, and Jorah convinces her to do that and be the leader that she dreams of being, not somebody that's artificially propped up and under the theoretical control of anybody else. So there we have two leaders heeding wise counsel in this episode, which is good to see, and motivated by pride, just like you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that it's important to note in that scene as well that, Daenerys was just learning of the news in Westeros.
Yeah.
She had been completely unplugged from what's been happening over there. I mean, she didn't know that Robert Baratheon was dead, and she didn't know that there were 4 kings that were all vying for the same role. Like, she didn't know any of that. And I think she probably, in her inexperience and her youth, she got a little overexcited, and she saw the easy way to get there for a split second. And she did have that wise counsel that, stopped her.
Right. And Jorah, it's so funny too. He's right, but where's his motivation coming from? Is it from selfishness because he wants Daenerys for himself and doesn't want her to be married? I think that definitely plays a part in his motivation here for giving her this advice. Although it's the correct advice. But yeah, I think it's definitely plays a part.
I think that after seeing her in the fire with the dragons, right. I think after that it's more of a, I am going to protect this girl at all costs. And then he has that conversation with Quaithe.
Oh, with Quaithe?
Quaithe, thank you. Which we'll talk about later. But I think, all of that, his own personal inclination to protect her, plus, this Red Priestess that is telling him to protect her, plus seeing that she is starting to get a little overexcited, like maybe Viserys used to.
Yeah.
Used to be,
Yeah, that's a good point too.
All of that coupled together, probably is like, okay, well, Jorah has to like calm her down.
Yeah, it's funny though, but she does accuse him almost. It's interesting. Zaro mentions to her loyal manservant, who obviously is in love with her, right? Mm-hmm. And so she's like, "Well, what the hell do you want, Zaro?" And she's she's trying to figure out everybody's motivation. So during this conversation to Jorah, she also tells him, well, what do you want? Tell me. And he's like, shit, I'm busted. So he switches, he gives a really good explanation, but I think he omitted the fact that he also wants her to himself. But I really did like the way he articulated this. He says, in response, what do you want? Tell me. He says, to see you on the Iron Throne. You have a gentle heart. You would not only be feared and respected, you would be loved. Someone who can rule and should rule. Centuries come and go without a person like that coming into the world. And then the kicker, there are times when I'm with you and I still can't believe you're real. Yeah, I thought that was such a cool line.
That line is probably my favorite in the entire episode.
Yeah, and you can tell she's just really touched and like things are put into perspective by this line, and she bites it, she takes it hook, line, and sinker, and and goes along with his advice to go to Westeros without Zaro and to let him go and get a ship for her.
Yeah, but at the same time, he had to have known. That's the one part that didn't jive with me in this whole scene, was that he sat there and he said, all you need is one ship. Nah, dude. Mm-mm.
Right.
Nope.
He thinks that she's going to be able to get allies in Westeros,
which was true. That's what he needed. That's what she needed.
Yeah, but she could arrive with one ship and 3 grown dragons. You know what I mean? But not
yes.
one ship and 3 baby dragons. That's too risky.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct.
So yeah, I don't think that's a good idea to go to Westeros immediately.
Right.
In any sense. Although if she was motivated to go immediately, it's better to go on her own, not to be somebody's puppet, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, there was a lot, in with Daenerys and Jorah and Zaro. There was a lot of pride, I think, playing a part in just what was happening, just weaved in throughout that entire storyline in this episode. And then the
Definitely.
last little bit of pride that I saw was Loras and Brienne. You know, they both are hellbent on being the one to avenge Renly's death.
Yeah.
You know, come hell or high water. And Catelyn had to reel Brienne in, and Marjorie had to reel Loras in.
Big time.
You know, so I just noticed a lot of elements of that theme of pride just playing a really large part and sometimes a very small, subtle part throughout the episode.
I agree. It's everywhere. Every storyline had it. Mm-hmm. For sure. Good call.
Thanks. How about you?
All right. My number 5. Jon gets his chance to play on the A team.
Yay!
You know, he gets sent out first shift of the game. Here we go. Or in this episode, and it's pretty awesome. You know, they see a fire on the mountain in the distance as they're camped out on the Fist of the First Men, and they know that when those people who are at that fire lookouts with better eyes than they have, because that's what their job is, you know, they see him coming, that they're going to turn that into a signal fire, and Mance is going to attack. And the wildlings are better trained now with Mance leading them than they were ever beforehand, because Mance is, you know, has military strategy experience from being in the Night's Watch, training and discipline and whatnot. So their tactics will have changed. So Qyburn says, you know, we got to go and take these guys out, sneak attack these guys before they let Mance know we're coming. So he wants to take Harker, Stone Snake, and Borba, which I thought are all fucking cool names.
Yes.
Right? And Jon volunteers to go with Qyburn. And here is, again, we have another example of a leader heeding wise counsel and giving Jon the opportunity to step up and prove himself, as Jeor eventually does decide to let Jon go with the crew here. You know, Jon points out that he killed a white, and Mormont has a hilarious line in response where he's like, "Aye, you killed a white. You also let an old man beat you bloody and take your sword." Craster and Qyburn steps up in Jon's defense and says, "In the boy's defense, that's a tough old goat," you know, which is funny. Craster is a tough old bastard, man. Weathered old guy, you know. And yeah, so Sam volunteers to step up and take on Jon's duties while he's gone. And
the way he said that, the way he offered, you could almost hear Jeor Mormont going, "Really? No. Okay."
What do you mean? Really?
Just like, looking at Sam, because Samwell's just like, "Well, I can do it. I'll be your steward, you know, Lord Commander." And he's just looking, you know, he's looking at Samwell, just, you could just see the wheels turning in his head going, "How am I going from Jon Snow to you?"
Like he wouldn't want Samwell?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh, I mean, Sam would probably be the best option for a steward other than Jon, you know?
For a Mormont? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Sam is like, he's obviously going to get you the best food, you know? He can read and write really well, so he's good for...
He always read it in a book.
Yeah, he knows everything. He's going to be a great advisor. Like, I don't know, I think Sam would be the best steward, for sure. Jon's just like, "Let me range, I don't want to make your bed," you know?
I just want to pout in the corner.
I just want to pout and hit things with my sword. Mope a bit,
I'm gonna
maybe.
go practice my speech that I'll be saying for months and months.
Yeah, so... Yeah. So basically, Jon gets to step up here and go do what he's been dreaming about doing his whole life, and it's not going to go as he expects at all. You know?
What was it? Yeah. No. Absolutely. I agree. Well, I mean, I don't think anybody could have expected what was about to happen.
Right. And Qyburn is sizing him up this whole time too. It's interesting. You can see him kind of like looking at Jon and like, you know, getting an eye of like trying to get a read on him. And Jon just looks super cool in this scene, man. He's just chilling there, like looking all like rugged with his hair all crazy and just acting super confident, you know, like Qyburn's like, who the fuck is this dude? This new guy who's just like, let me go with the A squad. You know what I mean? Like, I can do it. He obviously catches Qyburn's attention, you know, and he's like, who's this guy? You know, maybe he's an up and comer. I feel like so that was pretty cool, and I really, really, really loved Mormont's acceptance line where he decides to send Jon, and the way he reveals that he's accepted the proposal, he says, well, I hope you make a better ranger than you do a steward.
Yeah, right. Which, you know, I think that was kind of a service that he was doing to Jon anyways. You know, I don't think that he was going to be able to keep him as a steward for very long.
Right.
Given just his skills, and he needed to go out there and he needed to earn his spot. I mean, you know, you can learn from the old commander from the Lord Commander all you want, but he's going to have to go out and be something for himself.
Yeah.
If he's ever going to lead.
I feel like Jon's unique position as steward with the intent of grooming him for training, I feel like that in his case, his position was more like steward / right-hand man henchman. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I completely 100% agree.
Yeah. So this is like the evolution of the steward position for Jon is like, yeah, you're going to be my steward, but you're also going to get field experience.
Correct.
You know.
Correct. Yeah. Well, you know, it could be also that Mormont saw kind of what was going on beyond the wall, with, you know, just kind of the culmination of everything that was happening, and knowing that the wildlings were all getting together and Mance was getting them together, and Qyburn's a little jumpy, Benjen Stark is missing, and he, you know, because I saw something that said that this was Jon Snow is now being fast-tracked.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha.
And
yeah,
so,
essentially.
When you think about it from that perspective, you think, okay, so maybe Mormont thought, okay, you know, this is
escalating.
Yeah, this is going to be something that even I'm not prepared for.
Right.
So
things are getting out of control.
Let's get Jon going.
Yep,
because
I agree.
He's got the heart, he's got the skill, he's got the leadership potential, right?
He's
so
born for
he
it.
goes out and he makes something of himself with Qyburn half hand, and comes back from that.
That's a big
He will
thing.
earn the respect of the rest of the watch, and he'll be able to take over if Jeor dies or when he hands it over, right?
Right. Yeah, it's essentially the perfect opportunity that just falls right into their laps. Like, it's exactly what they both want. And so Jeor realizes that this is a good way to for Jon to make a name for himself. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So because when I heard that, I looked at that scene again from that perspective, and I totally saw it differently, and I had a greater respect for that scene as a very pivotal moment for Jon Snow.
Yeah, I'd say so.
More than just like, oh, there he goes,
Well, yeah,
there's a ranger now, right? You're like, holy shit, he's going off to be a man.
Yeah, he's on the A team. Like, that's big. Yeah,
he's going to be on the Eastwatch 7 one day.
yeah. He's going to be leading
amazing.
the Eastwatch 7.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
captain.
you beat me to it.
Yeah.
We're going to see A-team music, and there's going to be a lot of running. There's going to be pole vaulting. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. It's going to be so sick. Pole vaulting. Wait.
Yeah, the Night King with his pole.
Oh, yeah.
It's very sad.
Is javelin throwing?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for keeping me honest on that one.
That pretty much wraps up my number 5. Just like that whole scene there.
Nice.
Anything else you want to add?
No. Thank you for letting me add what I added.
Of course. Teamwork.
Makes the dream work.
So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is, I'm shifting things around since I added up my number 5 at the last minute, is Tywin and Arya. So, first of all, these two, I love their chemistry. I love the fact that they got to spend so much time together.
Really strong scene.
What's that?
It's just a really strong scene in every aspect.
So much. You know, you learn so much about Tywin, you know, at his little war council meeting. You know, you learn that he doesn't care if you're family. He'll spare your life, but you don't get a pass.
Yeah.
which I think is important to know, especially for, what's to come after Blackwater.
Yeah, that was a great little interaction with his cousin there. Like, if you didn't have Lannisters, if your last name wasn't Lannister, you'd be something or other. I don't remember, but yeah, it's good.
Probably dead.
And because you're my cousin, I'll let you wake up from that sleep.
Right, right, exactly.
Oh shit! Yeah, that was good.
I have always thought that Tywin knew that was Arya Stark.
I was wondering. Were we talking about that last week at Late Week 2? I thought you said didn't think that he knew it was Arya Stark.
Maybe I thought about it more then.
Yeah, because I was like, maybe he knows.
So
he figured out that she's from the north.
Maybe it was watching this scene then, is that you're looking at this and he's knowingly looking at her. He knows that she's from the north. He's got this knowing stare.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of this fantastic scene, she says, anyone can be killed. And the amusement drains from his face. The intensity goes up on her face.
And they're just glaring at each other.
And they're killing each other with their eyes.
They literally are.
And
oh my God.
And it's in that moment that you think, if Tywin does know that Arya Stark is, in fact, his cupbearer, then I wouldn't be surprised if he hid that information, kept her there because Joffrey, if he handed her
over to Joffrey, she's in danger.
Joffrey, he would kill her.
Yeah, and that's another bargaining chip that they would lose. And that's what I was speculating about last week. I was like, okay, so if he does know, then why did he not do something about it? And you had said that was one reason that you thought that he didn't know, was because he's such like an organized, methodical, systematic dude that if he thought he had Arya, she would be under lock and key. And I was thinking maybe
it seems this week I've jumped over to your side.
Yeah, and so I was thinking maybe since it seems that through people's actions that you can either get on his bad side or earn his respect based on your actions. Like when Tyrion manages to manipulate the mountain clans and make it all the way back to the army and then win in the battle, and Tywin makes him hand to the king, I was thinking maybe he's earned a respect for Arya for facing down her enemies, for being clever enough to survive, and maybe he's just lets her slide just to see what happens because he's gained a respect for her and wants to see what happens, just out of pure curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with an explanation of why he wouldn't take her if he knows that it's her. So I can't decide whether or not he knows because I can't fully justify why he wouldn't take her captive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's interesting. He had to have had some inkling. Because he was the smartest of all of them.
I guess, yeah.
The most shrewd.
Yeah, he's obviously the smartest. I guess it could hinge on the question of, does he know that this group of prisoners that she was part of just came from King's Landing and were with Yoren heading to the Night's Watch? He was easily able to determine that she was a northerner. He's, as we find out in the next episode, he was able to determine that she's highborn based on her usage of my lady instead of saying
milady,
my lord instead of saying my
lord,
right? So he's checking off boxes. He's like, okay, she's not from Maidenpool. She didn't know that the Mooton's sigil was the red salmon. She's slick on the northern stuff, so he assumes she's from the north. She's like, oh, I'm from Barrowton, House Dustin, two crossed axes with beneath a black crown, So she's obviously slick enough to be able to spout this out. Then,
which could either mean that she's from there or she's educated enough to know the sigils. Like when earlier we saw Bran being quizzed by Maester Luwin on all of the sigils in the north.
Exactly. So if anything, she knows the northern sigils. So she's definitely from there. Then possibly based on her that last line of anybody can die, anybody can be killed. Maybe he
in that
picked
moment
up
he
on,
has to know, right?
Well, possibly, yeah, because he knows that there's this little girl who's a Stark loyalist. That he's determined based on this line here. She's from the north. She's anomalous. If she came from King's Landing, where a tiny little northern girl is missing from, he would be able theoretically to deduce that that's
Dressed as a
Arya
boy.
Stark. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in disguise. But if he doesn't know that batch of prisoners came from King's Landing, he might not necessarily connect those dots. He could think that she's just came down from the north, which would exclude her from being Arya Stark since she was already supposed to be in the south, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's, who knows? I would love to know. But I think it's, the way they make us wonder is great, and it's really effective, obviously, because we're sitting here debating it. So the tension is high.
Well, and they're both so perfect in this scene.
Yeah.
And there's so many layers to this simple conversation, that you can't help but just sit there and try and meditate on it for a little bit and just try and connect the dots yourself, right? Like you were just saying, okay, check off that box. So I'd be interested to know, absolutely. Like if I ever got in front of, D.B. Weiss or Dave Benioff, I'd just be like, hey, what about this scene? Can you tell me anything?
Yeah, totally.
One of the characters is dead now. Like, who cares?
Yeah, just tell us.
Tell me the answer.
Okay, I got another thing that should be fun to talk about. So in that scene, Tywin, she explains where she claims she's from, and then Tywin asks her, "What do they say of Robb Stark in the North?" Right, and she says they call him the Young Wolf. They say he rides into battle on the back of a giant direwolf. Mm-hmm. They say he can turn into a wolf himself when he wants. They say he can't be killed, right? And that's when he says, "And do you believe them?" And she says, "No, my lord. Anyone can be killed." Mm-hmm. But think about what she's saying here. They call him the Young Wolf. They say he rides into battle on the back of a giant direwolf. They say he can turn into a wolf himself when he wants. Without giving away any book spoilers about the topic of warging, okay? Mm-hmm. Does this imply that Arya is aware of the capability of warging? Because obviously Bran can essentially turn himself into a wolf whenever he wants to by warging into summer, right? Does this hint that Arya is aware of this, that maybe she thinks Robb could have this capability, or that maybe she has had it herself at some point, that she had some connection with Nymeria and is aware of this warging capability of Stark, at least one Stark kid? Like, what do you think? Is this hinting at anything here?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it would be interesting if that was the case. However, there's no evidence anywhere really that she has that ability.
Except for this line, which the mirroring of warging is too close to be potentially coincidental. So this line could be the only evidence that there's something more going on here.
So, I mean, so you think maybe because all of the Starks are, paired with a direwolf, that all of them have this capability then? Because there's always been talk of Jon Snow warging into Ghost until his body was revived, right?
Right.
There was that theory.
Yeah, there's people suggesting that could be possible. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I just heard this line this time and I was like, whoa, interesting. Arya's talking about what's essentially could be looked at as warging, So I was wondering. But she
also listens. It could be what people are saying, especially where the commoners are.
And that
because
maybe
she's always been good at being quiet.
Right, and maybe that could hint that people are talking about Robb warging.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, maybe Robb is a warg as well, and the word has spread among the Northerners that he has that he can be this wolf. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like we saw how deeply Grey Wind was under his control when he let him in the cage with Jaime, and he went right up to him. Maybe people are aware of this phenomenon of Robb, essentially becoming the wolf and having the wolf acting exactly in his favor and according to his desires. So maybe
John has that ability with Ghost as well. I mean, I know that he's a Targaryen, but he's also a Stark, right?
Yeah.
So, and he does have that connection with Ghost.
Does he? I mean, I know that Ghost disappears for days at a time, right? Off hunting
Ghost
and
comes
stuff.
when he needs him, though.
Yeah, it's true. It seems that Ghost does arrive when Jon needs him, much as the way that Drogon did. Maybe Dany has a connection with Drogon, at Daznak's pit when they're having the fighting tournament, when she finally allows the games and Meereen to be brought back, and the Sons of the Harpy attack.
Oh yeah, 100%. She is, her and Drogon are they have a
mental bond. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked about it on Still Smug. The questions that people have had about the connection between a dragon rider and their dragon, and it's sort of unknown what exact bond exists between the two, but there seems to be something, because they actually portray it quite beautifully on the show. I don't know if you guys probably remember. They're surrounded by the Sons of Harpy. Dany, they're enclosing. Dany sort of takes Missandei's hand, and they sort of look at each other. Yeah, and she closes her eyes and sort of tilts her head to the sky, and then Drogon comes out of nowhere. It seems like there's some kind of mental thing going on there. So maybe that's the case with Robb, and word is spread in the north, and maybe Arya has no idea what warging is, but she's heard of Robb becoming a wolf and doesn't understand that's what the people are talking about, or who knows. It's just cool. I thought it possibly is a significant line.
Yes. So that was my number 4, was Tywin and Arya. Unless you had something else that you wanted to say about them.
Tywin and Arya. No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, maybe Tywin knows who she is, maybe he doesn't. Really intense either way, and it's got us wondering. So they did their job well with that scene, I think.
I agree. What was your number 4?
My number 4 is Cat and Brienne.
Yay!
And this is one of my all-time favorite scenes of the show. Cat and Brienne are on the run and discussing the shape of the shadow demon. And Cat says that, she saw a shadow demon in the shape of man. And which is, she's got to be like, what the fuck is going on here? Right? Mm-hmm. And Brienne's like, in the shape of Stannis, in the shape of Stannis. So Brienne, is adamant about this. And so they're talking. Cat is planning on seeing Robb and then leaving for Winterfell. They're bonding about how neither of them really knew their mothers. Cat lost her mom really young. Brienne never met her mother. There was a good line that I'm sure the mothers out there appreciated, where Brienne is talking about, she's reacting to learning that Cat's mom died on the birthing bed, and she says, "It's a bloody business." And Cat replies, "What comes after is even harder." Talking about raising the children. And
that's funny, because when I saw this scene, I was a new mom.
Oh yeah.
Still. Yeah. I don't even think that my son was born yet. And I thought that I knew what that meant, and I didn't. Not until now, when I saw it just yesterday, or 2 days ago. And I heard her say it again, and it had much more meaning this time.
You're like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It's the difference between being a mom with an infant and then being a mom of a 6 and 4-year-old, where you're like, yeah, no, Cat's right.
That's great. Yeah, that line stuck out to me. I figured that would have a lot of meaning for people. So I like this part too. Like I said before, Cat probably sees her as an Arya. And
yes,
and so they sort of start bonding about these type of things. And Cat is comforting Brienne and telling her, it wasn't her fault that Renly was killed, and Renly's enemies are Robb's enemies as well. It finally comes down to, and Brienne says to her, "Well, I do not know your son, my lady, but I could serve you if you would have me." And the look on Cat's face, she's sort of stunned. This is so significant. This is the first time in Cat's life where she's had somebody that wants to pledge fealty and loyalty and serve in service to her. You know, usually she'd be seeing this with Ned. People would be pledging their service to Ned, the Lord of Winterfell. Mm-hmm. But here she has this legendary, like anomalous female warrior who wants to pledge her service to her, and she's like, you can tell she's so honored by it, and it's just really a beautiful moment. And Brienne continues on this path, saying, you have courage, not battle courage, perhaps, but I don't know, a woman's kind of courage. And I've mentioned this before because I think that's a really cool line. There's different types of strength of women in this show, and Brienne is like the physical warrior type. Same with Arya and Kat and Marjorie and Cersei to some, in terms of strength, and Daenerys are like that womanly, courageous type of strong. So Brienne continues. I think that when the time comes, you will not hold me back. Promise that you will not hold me back from Stannis. And she doesn't hesitate at all. When the time comes, I will not hold you back. And just such a powerful moment as Brienne unsheaths her blade and ceremoniously places it on the floor in front of Kat as she takes a knee and kneels and says, "Then I am yours, my lady. I will shield your back and give my life for yours if it comes to that. I swear it by the old gods and the new." And Kat responds in the traditional form, saying, "I vow that you shall always have a place at my home and at my table, and that I shall ask of you no service that will bring you dishonor. I swear it by the old gods and the new." And I love it. It's just so cool. Like everything about it is just amazing. And it so totally mirrors that scene when in season 6 that like we were talking about before we got on air, where Brienne is pledging her service to Sansa, and Sansa is emulating Kat in that moment and trying to remember the traditional form of this vow. And Podrick Payne is helping her spark the lines in her mind as he helps her recall.
Place at your table.
Yeah. I just think that these two scenes are so great. And I just love Brienne.
They're so delicate.
So delicate. Yeah. I love Brienne, man.
I do. I love that. One of my favorite parts of this scene is that Brienne is so intent on being this warrior, despite the fact that she's a woman. Right? I'm going to be a woman knight. If there's no word for it, but that's what she wants to be. Right.
Right.
But she doesn't look down on women, mothers. She looks at Kat as an equally strong and courageous woman, just in a different way. Right. And the fact that she can see that, and she's not ashamed of being a woman, despite her mannish, in this world, mannish qualities, right?
She is rather mannish. Austin, that's my mother. Sorry.
Oh, that was good. Good job. But yeah, they both are so strong. They're equally strong. They're equally brave. They have this equal sense of honor. And at the same time, this is a mother that Brienne doesn't get to have, and this is a daughter that Catelyn misses. And it all culminates into this one very beautifully written and played out
podcast.
Scene. Podcast, yes. You and I were brilliant. Duh. The show is lucky to have us talk about it.
You said it, not me.
Hell yeah! I'll say it again. Not now, but maybe another time. But yeah, that was one of my notes. Was about the woman's sort of courage and the pledge. I'm glad that you brought that up. That's a very beautiful scene.
Yeah, I love that scene so much. That's one of my series highlights, for sure.
Both times.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both times. So that pretty much covers my number 4.
Cool. My number 3, I'm gonna go with talking about Littlefinger.
Yes, nice.
Littlefinger, man. I think at this point, anybody who listens to us talk about this, if there is a Littlefinger scene to talk about, it's going to make my top 5.
Yeah, yes. Love Littlefinger.
So I wrote down a quote from Littlefinger that I want to talk about a little bit because I feel like he reveals himself in this episode as much as he's going to, until maybe the end, right?
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
when he's talking to Loras, when Loras is ready to, take on the entire army of Stannis, over Renly's body, Littlefinger, do you watch How I Met Your Mother?
No, I've never seen it.
There's this Marshall as a character is played by Jason Segel, and he just always says this line that's like, "Is that what you desire?" And so Littlefinger's like, he looks at Loras and he's like, "What do you desire?" And all I see is Jason Segel saying it in a mocking way, and so it's
that's so funny.
It throws me off every time.
Baelish's Mockingbird sigil too.
But anyways, after that, he said, "I have always found revenge to be the purest of motivations, but you won't have a chance to put your sword through Stannis, not today. You will be cut to pieces before he sets foot on solid ground. If it is justice that you want, be smart about it." And I think this basically tells us what Littlefinger is doing. Littlefinger, all he wants is justice for those who have wronged him or underestimated him. And his vision of ultimate justice is being on that iron throne to show everybody that he is from a minor house, and everybody did think that he was, stupid or insignificant or not worthy, but he did it anyways, and he did it on the backs of all these people. I think it's what fueled him to betray Ned. It's what fueled him to kill Jon Arryn and start this war under false pretenses.
Just revenge against everybody.
Against anybody that ever wronged him,
right, yeah.
And I think that
agree.
And it's him being smart enough to wait when it was time to wait, to act when it was time to act. He built this brothel with all of the high people that came in. Highborn, I don't want to say highborn, but the powerful people, right? The rich and powerful that came into his brothels where he had, the secrets, and he was able to listen. I mean, he looked like a perv as he was looking at what was happening, but he was learning. He was learning who liked, weird fetishes, or who wanted the thrill kills, or who...
Yeah, knowledge is power. Just like Varys says, they don't steal what's like the gold from the safe. They steal the letters and read them and put them back.
So he learned how to make a buck.
The ledgers.
And he learned about everyone around him, and he used that to his advantage. And he almost had it. He got cocky in the end with Sansa because he thought that he had her completely under his control, and he underestimated her just as everybody has always underestimated him. And I think that was...
Oh, that's hilarious. That brings a full circle for him. That's so
in
great.
This one, so it's just, I'm watching this whole thing, this whole rewatch that we're doing with brand new eyes for Littlefinger now that we have his whole story. And I think that's why I talk about him so much, because I feel that every scene with him, I learned something new with him. And he's so fascinating.
So... Definitely. So would you say that Baelish is your bae?
No.
Because when I'm writing notes for the episodes today, this time I started, instead of typing out Littlefinger or Baelish, I'll just type bae.
I write LF.
LF? Nice.
Bae. No. You wipe that word off of your lips. So, yeah, so I did so much research on Peter Baelish and just where he started, and him challenging Brandon Stark to the duel. He was almost killed until Catelyn pleaded for his life, which is probably why the only person he ever had any true feelings for was Catelyn. maybe his only true blind spot was her.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know, because he
Her
tried
and
to
Sansa.
manipulate her when he saw her in last week's episode. So
he did. He definitely did manipulate her for sure.
But anyways, so that's my point about Littlefinger today, is that I think he gave the most revealing thing about himself by trying to coach Loras and how to fuel his own revenge for Renly.
So do you think that, considering he said that revenge is the most pure, do you think that he finds himself to be pure?
No.
Is this part of his process of justifying his own like horrible behavior? Is he's convinced himself that he's the good guy?
You know what? I think he was using pure. I think he absolutely thinks he's in the right, 100%. But I also think that when it comes to the purest of motivations for him, I think he understands that his need for revenge is fueling it, and that fuel to his own fire is what's pure. And not him.
Okay.
Not Littlefinger himself.
Gotcha.
I don't know. That's my thought.
I've always found that revenge to be the most pure of motivations.
You won't have a chance to put your sword through Stannis, not today. I'm in my throaty voice, so I'm lying to you.
He's great.
Anyways, that's my number 3.
Oh, that was good. Really good. Good
Thanks.
points.
What's yours?
I like that how he felt like everybody always like underestimated him, and then that's what brings him down to the end, is underestimating Sansa, like treating somebody the way that he was treated. What a sucker. My number 3 is the death of Renly.
That was my number 2, so let's combine them. Yay!
What? Perfect. So Renly and Cat and Brienne are chilling in the royal tent here, and Cat's telling Renly that Robb has no hostility towards the crown if Renly's king.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And Renly's like, well, Robb can continue to style himself king in the north. That's fine, and he can, the Starks can have Moat Cailin and the north, but Robb needs to swear fealty to me. And she's like, I don't know if that's going to happen, but our families have been friends for a long time, so we'll work together. We'll figure it out. It's essentially what it comes down to. And then the Shadow Demon enters, like the wind starts howling for a second, and Shadow Demon like osmoses into the room and takes form behind Renly and stabs him right through the fucking heart. And Brienne screams. And Catelyn is just like, doesn't even react. She's almost like, what? She's
like Davos.
Frozen, essentially. Yeah, she's like, what the fuck? And so blood is just squirting out, and there's like black mist coming off the blade that's sticking out of his chest. And it's right after Brienne took off his armor, too. So she, in the books, you learn that she's like traumatized by the fact that she's just taken his armor off, and then boom, he's stabbed to death right where she was
because
just
that would have saved him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who knows? So Bran screams and drops to like cradle Renly, and before she like has a chance to pick him up, like 2 or 3 dudes come in. And are like, you'll pay for this, woman! And for some reason they think that she did it.
Well, they hate her.
And, yeah, true. So she takes them all out in badass fashion. So sick. Brienne is a beast. And
they looked so small in comparison to her. Did you notice that?
I know. Yeah, I love it. They hire. She's big. She's
over 6
I feel
foot.
like she was taller than me when I met her. Yeah, she's huge, and she's like the nicest person ever. Just so smiley. Really cool. But yeah, those guys come in. They must have hired like some kind of shorter guys just to emphasize her height here. The way that they used to make door frames smaller in Western movies to make the cowboys look taller. That type of thing. Shoot from a low angle.
Desi Arnaz used to wear lifts in his shoes. Desi Arnaz, Lucy and Ricky.
Who's that?
I love Lucy.
Lucy, you got them splaining the dough. That's great. So she freaks out, kills those guys in spectacular fashion, and then Kat's like, we gotta get out of here. Like, you're not gonna do any good by, following Renly to his grave. Like, the only way you're gonna be able to avenge him is by escaping. Like, we gotta go. And as soon as she says that, Brienne's like, oh yes, I want to avenge him. Okay, let's go. Like, she's so simple. First she's just like, I can't leave him. Then she's like, wait, you're right, I do want to avenge him. Let's get out of here. Like, she's just like so pure and and simple-minded, just like Duncan the Tall, who she's probably descended from. Actually, I think George has said that she is, in fact, descended from Ser Duncan the Tall. Hopefully, we get a novella to explain that to us. That would be cool. A Duncan Egg novella where they go to Tarth or something.
Okay, easy there, buddy. Winds of Winter. Dream of spring.
Yeah, I know.
Then he can do whatever he wants.
And we're getting She-Wolves of Winterfell too, which is the Duncan and Egg going to Winterfell, and that'll probably explain how we end up having a Hodor at Winterfell. Hodor. So yeah, that's pretty badass. And so they vacate out of the spot real quick, and then the next part when we get back here is it cuts to Loras, and he's just fucked. Loras is fucked, but his armor is really badass looking. Like seriously cool armor. We get to see it kind of close up here. Really awesome. Like I'm endlessly impressed by the costuming and aesthetics of this TV show. Would you agree?
100%. We could probably do an entire podcast episode about the evolution of just the costumes.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's what stuck out to me the most at first immediately when I started watching this show. Within 15 seconds, I was like, this show looks like $1 million. I love it. It looks like pure money.
I thought that they hit their stride last season in a massive way with costumes.
Yeah, I mean, everything is just, it's endlessly improving aesthetically as well. And then the dragons are just like amazing. Easily the best looking dragons I've seen. But yeah, we talked a little bit about this scene. Baelish comes in and is pointing out that Stannis is almost here, and Loras is like, threatens Baelish at first, and it's funny. Baelish is like, I'm here talking to you, not Stannis, right? I'm just like to point that out, which is pretty funny. And Loras is just heartbroken, going on and on about how Renly would have been a good king and all that. And Baelish already knows that Loras is a tart, we could say. And so, yeah, that's when Baelish goes into asking him what Loras wants most and everything. And we'd already talked about that. So, yeah, they convince Loras to leave. And Marjorie sort of has an interesting moment here with Baelish after Loras storms out, where Baelish and she's like, he was so handsome, he was a handsome guy, and Baelish is like, yes, he was, blah blah blah, and Your Grace, I think he calls her, and she's like, if he wasn't a king, you like, just calling yourself a king doesn't make you king, and if Renly wasn't a king, then I wasn't a queen, let's be honest here, right? And Baelish is like, do you want to be a queen? She's like, no,
I want to be the
I want to
queen.
be the queen. Yeah. And she has like this look on her face. And I was thinking, whoa, that would be a crazy power duo. Like Marjorie and Baelish working together behind the scenes to get goals accomplished. And he ends up working with the Queen of Thorns, which is even crazier combo.
No, yes.
So they're all kind of in league together. But yeah, I just thought that was a really revealing moment for Marjorie, and we get an insight into her motivation and her, like, just how blunt she can be and how straight to the point and like streamlined and efficient, and just she can read people really well. She knows Baelish isn't like, she's not revealing anything Baelish doesn't know. She knows she can be open with him about this, like in this moment, and it's not like giving away anything.
Yes.
She's awesome.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's very obvious that the Tyrells
are up and comers.
That they value the education of the woman more than their men. I mean, Marjorie's dad is a bumbling idiot.
True. A buffoon.
Loras,
they call him, they're always talking down to him. Yeah, Mace Tyrell. Right?
Yes. Loras is an outstanding fighter, but a little short-sighted. But you look at the Queen of Thorns, you look at Marjorie, and you're like, okay, this house is in good hands. So it's interesting because I think every other house is designed differently.
Right. And we forgot to mention, she hasn't shown up yet, but when we talk about strong female characters in this show, the Queen of Thorns is like way
she's
up
the
there.
leader.
She's so epic.
She's their club president.
How about, okay, let's give a little book detail for to get people interested in reading the books. How about her two henchmen in the books? Remember them? The twins?
No. What is wrong with
them?
me? I told you I'm tired.
She,
Before we started, I told you I'm exhausted.
It's all good. You've been great. This is a just something a lot of people don't remember because it doesn't necessarily play a huge part, but I always get a kick out of it. She calls them left and right because they're twins, and they're always like to her left and right. They always got her back, like to her sides. They're these like 6.5, 7 foot tall, massive dudes who are just like beastly protector guys, and yeah, I just think it's so funny. Left and right.
Oh, I love that. Thing 1 and thing 2.
She's so she's so blunt and just like doesn't give a fuck and is willing to talk to people in the way that like in
Dorne,
like a sort of disrespectful but like hilarious
when she's talking
way.
to the sand snakes in Dorne. She's like, "You have something to say?" No,
Right.
Didn't think so. All right, the adults are gonna talk now.
Yeah, it's definitely let the adults talk, little girl. Oh, she's so great.
I agree.
I love when she and Marjorie sit down and talk with Sansa too, and the way she speaks to Brienne as well. The Queen of Thorns is great.
I agree. She is wonderful.
Yeah.
Be a dragon.
Be a dragon. So yeah, that's my number 3. Is just the death of Renly. And anything you want to add about that?
Well, yeah. So I'll piggyback on that a little bit, just because that was my
Awesome.
next point. Anyways, was Renly's death.
Do it up.
Was about how it shifted alliances and it shifted the war.
Oh, cool.
You know,
so we have like 2 different aspects of it.
Yeah, so,
Perfect.
which is cool, I think. So, there's a couple things that happen at the moment that Renly dies, right? Everything kind of dissolves almost immediately. It's almost like, the whole thing was made of sugar, right? And it was just somebody poured water on it and everything just like washed away immediately. Catelyn was right. They were playing at this king thing, right?
And the way they describe Renly too, he's copper. Looks pretty, but there's no substance.
Right.
Like, there's nothing there.
And what happens when Renly dies, everybody's scattering, basically. You have the army has gone over to Stannis, and they're just happy to have lived through that.
Right. We learned from Stannis that all of Renly's bannermen have gone to his side except for the Tyrells, who have fled.
Right. And the Tyrells, they move, they start to make their move into King's Landing, right? Which is the best thing ever to happen to Sansa.
She because they go over to Tywin.
Yes.
Right. And they end up coming in and leading the Tywin's forces into the Battle of the Blackwater. And Loras is wearing Renly's armor.
That's right.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then Brienne swears fealty to Catelyn. So it's like they all scatter to 3 different kings. I guess.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's cool.
So it's interesting how, this one guy who I guess everybody really believed in, but didn't really want to hold it together after he died. It was like, oh, I guess, okay, this is over. All right, I guess we'll just go do the next thing we were going to do. Which is interesting. So, but I think other than that, we've talked about Renly's death pretty extensively.
Yeah, I think so. Poor Renly, kind of.
Yeah, he
was.
The minute Loras in season 1 was telling him, "Oh, you would be a good king," I was like, "Come on,
playing
dude."
to his pride too.
Yeah, he's on the small council. You guys get to have a relationship. He becomes king. Everything gets messy in this world. Let's just let it go. And then he decides to be king. I never understood it. Like, I liked Renly. I thought he was wonderful, and I was sad when he died. But I never understood why he had a claim to the throne. Never got it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's just trying to follow in Robert's footsteps and take it, I think. You know? Just thought that was what would be best and tried to step up to do it.
Yeah.
Setting a new precedent for this means of succession.
Leadership should not be a popularity contest.
Yeah, definitely.
So, anyways, what was your number one?
So let's see. We talked about Danos.
I like it.
That's hilarious. I liked Davos's line, though. Loyal service means telling hard truths. You know, not just being a yes man. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a good line. So we got more. I guess I do have a little more to talk about my number two. We had Tyrion listening to Bronn as an advisor when he goes and meets with Wisdom Helene. And I thought that was cool, too, that they used that from the books, that these pyromancers in the order, like the masters of pyromancy, their title is Wisdom. Mm-hmm. So he called him Wisdom Helene, which is his last name or whatever. So they go in, and this is also really cool for me because, and sad at the same time, because Wisdom Helene is played by my boy, Roy Dotrice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was really exciting to see Roy on here again. And sadly, of course, because he passed away, about a month and a half ago. Bronn is warning that flinging the jars of wildfire at the ships could be dangerous because they're going to be throwing stuff back, and if somebody drops a jar of wildfire on the battlements, it could set King's Landing ablaze. So Tyrion recognizes that this is super dangerous, and Tyrion wouldn't necessarily think about that military angle because he doesn't have a ton of military experience. Neither does Helene. But Bronn is a fighter, and he's thinking about logistics like that. And he's like, I wouldn't want to be fucking holding these green jars when somebody's flinging shit at me. So he brings that up, and Tyrion recognizes the danger of the plan, and he takes over the operation and ends up, as we know, working with Bronn to devise the scheme that they end up using, which is putting all the wildfire on a boat and sending that out into the Blackwater Bay to destroy Stannis / Davos's fleet. Yeah. Sadly, they left out the chain concept from the book. But let's just say that there's a big chain in the books that is really cool.
Yes.
Tyrion is involved with, and
it's epically written.
Yeah, really cool. There's a similar type scene in a video game called Rise for Xbox One. It's like a Roman game, and there's a big chain in that game too. But yeah, they find out that there's 7,811 jars of wildfire at this moment. Tyrion looks shocked when he looks into this warehouse that's just full of these jars. There's lots of really cool moments in this scene. Some pretty epic foreshadowing when Tyrion says the contents of this room could lay King's Landing low, and that's totally foreshadowing how wildfire destroys the Sept of Baelor in the season 6 finale. Winds of Winter.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
And other potential caches of wildfire, which are hidden under other buildings in King's Landing, which may or may not still blow up in the future.
I can't wait to see that.
And so Tyrion was right. The contents of that room could lay King's Landing low.
I think King's Landing needs to blow up.
Oh, man.
I do.
I hope it doesn't. I mean, I hope some of it does, but not all of it.
I hope it all blows up.
Definitely not Maegor's Holdfast, because I like that castle, and I want to see more of like the internal hidden passages and stuff like that. That's one thing that's cool in the books too.
I think they need to hit the reset button on Westeros.
It's hilarious. An ELE, extinction level event.
Yeah.
There's another funny little conversation here when Tyrion's talking about how if you piss on wildfire, your cock burns off. and Halene's like, yeah, it burns so hot that it just fucking melts flesh like tallow.
Tallow, okay. I kept thinking he was saying Jell-O. And I'm like, I know that he's not saying Jello, but I can't figure out what he's saying because all I hear is Jello.
It melts flesh like Jello.
I'm like, that's descriptive. Like green Jello.
They say that, doesn't Dany say that the slaver who she buys the Unsullied from, what's his name? Krasny's Monastis, that his eyeballs burst and melt like jelly.
Yes. So gross and awesome.
Love it.
You're like, love it. I love it. I love it.
Oh, it's cool. Yeah. So that was cool. I like that line. And then at the end, he's getting all defensive about, the disrespect of his order and everything. Like, you wouldn't talk to me like that if what is this, Ares was still the king and stuff like that. Because they're kind of like, they don't buy it that the wildfire is really that strong. They haven't seen demonstrations of it yet.
Right.
And I've compared wildfire to, I've stated before that I believe that it comes from the concept of Greek fire,
right,
which is an anomalous incendiary device that was used in warfare in ancient times, called Greek fire. Check it out. I posted a Wikipedia page about it, maybe a video about it on the thing. I'll post something else about it so you guys can learn more about it too, because it's pretty neat, and it's a real history thing that this is based off of. So I think that's pretty cool. Actually, there's a great show on the History Channel right now called Nightfall, with a K, like Armored Knights, Nightfall. And in the preview for next week's episode, they said something about Greek fire.
So you hit record.
Yeah. I already had it hit record. I just got caught up with it. There's 4 episodes that have been out so far, and it's really good. If anybody wants to check that out, I highly recommend it. While Game of Thrones is off the air, it's kind of like getting a Game of Thrones fix, with sort of a Da Vinci Code type twist to it, which is really cool.
You piqued my interest.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones combined with the Dan Brown novels, sort of.
I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So wildfire, Greek fire. This is just a really cool scene. I loved seeing getting a little glimpse of the pyromancers. In the books, you get a much bigger glimpse, and they have like these wild displays of. They're showing off the wildfire and what it's capable of, and they have these like machines that are like pumping wildfire all out in these crazy patterns and stuff at the pyromancer's chambers, and Tyrion's like, "Whoa, this is crazy."
I would have loved to have seen that visually.
I know. So this is the type of stuff that you'll get to experience if you read the books. It's just like a whole nother level that they take everything to in the whole series.
It's the rest of the iceberg.
Yeah, so I'll mention again that I have the power to send free audiobooks as gifts to anybody who has not already received an audiobook as a gift from audible.com before. So if you want, right now book 1 isn't available, but if you want, I can send anybody that wants it book 2,
We're
book 3,
on
book 4,
season
book 5.
2, so book 2.
Yeah, or I can give you the Duncan Egg novellas, or the short story, books, the compilations that include the Princess in the Tower, or whatever, like any of the short stories.
The History of Westeros, which I think is the best book.
The World of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool. Tons of history and stuff. And you also need to buy the hardcover of that, though, because there's lots of great art in it, which you're missing out on if you just get the audiobook.
That hardcover lives in our bathroom.
Nice.
That's a lot of information, but that's where it lives.
Who was it? The Lord Too Fat to Sit a Horse, Wyman Manderley would, have plenty of time to read it.
There you go.
Because that's what he does. He's known for his bathroom breaks, right? Yeah, that would be perfect for him. Just brushing up on his Westerosi history. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 2, I think. We talked about Xaro and Dany, Dany taking Jorah's counsel. That's the last one there. So yeah.
Cool.
What's your number 1?
So my number 1 is a little lengthy. It's I made a potential connection that I'm not too sure about, and I'm still fleshing out. But it's about, did you notice that there seems to be a connection with the many-faced god and R'hllor.
Yeah, Jaqen called him the Red God in this episode.
So he, when he's talking to Arya, he says only death can pay for life, which we heard from Miri Mazdur.
Right.
Which I think we also heard from Melisandre.
Possibly. I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure I've heard her say it.
She does not sacrifice anything when she brings Jon back to life, though.
No, but his death paid for his life, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe Stannis' death paid for his life. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Could be blood magic, again.
It's interesting, too, because she says that there's, what does she say? There's the god of light and the god of death, right? And
what did we say to the god of death?
She thinks that the god of death is evil, though, but she worships what she calls the red god, like she's the red woman. Mm-hmm. But here, Jaqen H'ghar, who worships the god of death, is also calling the god of death the red god.
But he worships the many-faced god.
Right. And it also calls it the red god.
Right. So is it one and the same, right?
Exactly. Is the religion of R'hllor like misinterpreting this duality as one, like this single deity as being a duality? And because it does seem that Melisandre worships an evil god that burns, little children and stuff like that. So
yes, but at the same time, if that red god is fire and fire is power, and we're about to go into a war for the long night with the Night King, who is riding an ice dragon, and he is of ice, it goes to the larger theme of fire and ice combating each other, right?
True.
So it makes me want to step back and look at kind of all the religions of Westeros that you see that are actually doing something, right? I mean, the seven are just people that you pray to, and the old gods and the new, they're not really doing anything. But we've seen R'hllor and we've seen the many-faced god. These two are the only ones that are doing something that you can see tangible evidence of in this story. And are they the same? When you see Quaithe in Qarth,
she says she's no one.
She says she's no one. Correct. She says she's no one. Hang on.
Right.
She intermingles both elements of each faith. And where I wrote it down, she said, she says she's no one, but she comes from a side where Melisandre is from. Actually, her mask that she wears is elongated hexagons, which is exactly the same shape that Melisandre wears in her pendant, and it's seen in her clothing. Because her clothing is red, you can't really see it, but there is a pattern on her dress that is an elongated hexagon.
It's interesting, too, though. Her clothing is red, and Quaithe's mask is red, wood with red lacquer. So, red.
And they're both talking about fire, and they're, right. So it's, okay, you're no one. Jaqen H'ghar is no one. Melisandre is a servant of the Lord of Light. There's this element of fire. There's this element, this element of blood magic in both instances, with the fact that the many-faced god is taking faces and they're using it later.
And Melisandre talks about the Lord of Light, and then the darkness as well, like the duality. And then you have the House of Black and White, which is white and black. That duality again. It's crazy.
So there's just a lot of hints of it, though, in this particular episode.
Yeah. And Quaithe creates that bridge, like you were saying, combining elements of both together.
And we're going to see her one more time later in this season.
And she appears more in the books, too, which is really cool. Quaithe, oh man, what an interesting character. The concept of glass candles, remember?
Yes.
Like, oh man, you got to read the books, read the books, read the books.
That should just be like the mantra as we talk in the background. Read the books. Read the books. Oh, but then Quaithe is talking about protecting Daenerys, right?
Right.
And she's saying how important she is and how, she is the mother of dragons, and I am no one, but she is the mother of dragons. She needs true protectors now more than ever. They shall come day and night to see the wonder born into the world again. And when they see, they shall lust. For dragons are fire made flesh, and fire is power.
Oh, man. I can't wait to hopefully learn more about Quaithe at some point. I really hope that she comes back in the show and we get something with Quaithe.
Well, I think we have a red priestess.
Maybe that's Quaithe.
Yeah, that was going to be my thought when she showed up at she showed up in Marine.
Kinvara is her name.
Yeah, the one that showed up in Marine and freaked Varys out.
Yeah. Would you like to know what the voice in the fire said when the man cut your balls off?
He's like, I'd like you to leave.
Yeah, totally.
So anyways, you and I, we like to talk about religion a lot and the different religions of this show. And I feel like we got a really good connection here with two of the main religions and of this world, and they are the religions that are doing that have the tangible evidence of
power
of any forward progress in the story for the characters.
It's crazy.
So, yeah.
Good one.
What's your number one?
My number one is just the introduction to Wildfire.
Yay!
Yeah, so there's that. But we can talk a bit about another aspect which we didn't talk about, which was how Tyrion found out about the Wildfire.
Oh, with Lancel.
Yeah, it's so funny. Tyrion and Lancel are sitting in the little what would you call that thing that they're sitting in?
Carriage?
People like carry it around.
Carriage? Little dwarf carriage. I loved it when he fell out of it.
Yeah, he kicks him out on his face. But Tyrion is just fucking with Lancel, as he always does. He loves playing with him. So funny. And he's like, if the vile allegations about my brother and sister are true, would it make Jaime more or less likely to kill you? The smart money would be on more likely. But then perhaps his own unnatural urges would give him sympathy for yours. And Lancel's just like, no. He's like, I swear they're making Wildfire. I'm not just making it up.
I swear it. I, Lancel Lannister, swear on the old gods and
Stop, that's enough. Even torturing you is boring.
Oh, he is such a wimp.
Yeah. And then so he's like shoos him and he's getting out and he kicks him out onto his face and demeans him even further by looking him in the face and telling Lancel, tell Bronn to kill you if anything should happen to me. And Lancel looks up at Bronn, please kill me if anything should happen to Lord Tyrion. And runs off like Napoleon Dynamite. And and Bronn kind of says, it will be my pleasure.
Yeah, did you notice that Bronn always has his hand on the hilt of his sword?
Absolutely. Either on the hilt of his sword or his kukri.
He is always ready.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I have that same kukri. My friend brought it back for me from Nepal. It's fucking badass. That blade is heavy. It's a hacking weapon. It's a hacking weapon. You don't want to be in the way of that blade. It's heavy. Really blade heavy.
I don't want to be in the way of any blade, Duncan.
Especially not that blade. Yeah. But yeah, he's always got his hand on it, He's cocked and ready for action at all times.
Agreed.
But yeah, I just thought that was really funny, and that pretty much, wraps up the Wildfire talk. Got any notes you want to talk about? I think I have a bunch of notes.
I have one note in particular that we didn't talk about. So it's a hypocrisy of our Mother of Dragons. She is very against slaves. She's, the breaker of chains. And, she was sold off to her own husband as well. But she looks at one of her closest friends, Doria, and she tells her basically, you need to go make him happy so that, we can learn some more about him. So she pimps out her friend
Zaro?
to Zaro.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. I don't even remember that. That's wild. That's hardcore. Maybe she thinks that Doria won't care because she was like a pillow girl or a pleasure house girl.
Still,
either way, though, it's still messed up. Yeah.
Yeah. She's still pimping out her friends for her own benefit. I think once she meets Missandei, it all changes. Because Missandei was the first person I think that she met that was truly affected and hurt and traumatized. Missandei.
Oh, Missandei? Wait, what do you mean? Truly hurt and affected and traumatized by what?
She was traumatized from what she used to have to do as a slave, right?
Right.
Doria didn't care.
Yeah, she didn't seem to be
too affected,
at least.
Whose penis am I sitting on this week? That sounds great.
Yeah. I mean, some people, are totally cool with that.
That's totally fine, to each their own, man.
Some people love it. Yeah, some people love it. I've seen interviews with sex workers, where they're like, I do it because I like it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat.
Yep.
There's definitely demand for it.
A little bit.
So, let's see. There's some funny Cersei and Tyrion stuff where...
Gosh, they hate each other.
Yeah, Tyrion's telling Cersei that Renly got murdered, and they're talking about the suspects, and he's like, some people say Cat Stark did it. Some say one of his own Kingsguard. Others say Stannis himself. Cersei's like, I say well done to those people, and Tyrion's like, you're a fucking idiot. That means all of Renly's armies are flocking to support Stannis, So no, it's not good.
She's an idiot.
Yeah, and Baelish is there, and I have in my notes, Bay says we can outspend him 3-1. Oh no, Cersei says Baelish says that, right?
Yeah.
And then Tyrion says, that you have too much respect for money, and that he also points out that Myrcella will be safer in Dorne. And she's like, you're so clever with your schemes and plots. And he's like, schemes and plots are the same thing.
I loved that line. Like, you can just see her going, do you read? Have you ever read? Like, do you know what that is?
Yeah, he's just shutting her down on every point that she says. And like,
well, she's drunk too.
Oh, yeah, true. So that's pretty funny. I also really liked the moment when Bronn and Tyrion are walking through King's Landing, and right, and there's a street preacher, like a dude who's like stirring up drama against the king, and he's talking about the incest of the Lannisters, and Tyrion's like, it's hard to argue with his assessment, which I thought was pretty funny. Incest spawns a monster king.
Demon monkey. I'm trying to save these people.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. He's like, a dancing king prancing down his blood-stained halls to the tune of a twisted demon monkey. He's like, oh, you have to admire his imagination. And Bronn's like, he's talking about you.
He's talking about you, fool.
Right, but this is funny because the twisted demon monkey thing references, and we're always talking about historical stuff that's referenced in the show, like Stark, Lannister, York, Lancaster, stuff like that. Wildfire, Greek fire. So here we have Tyrion being called a twisted demon monkey, and this mirrors a character in Chinese mythology called Sun Wukong. And he's also known as the Monkey King, and he's who is described as a twisted demon monkey or monkey demon. Literally, it's like, so the exact words are describing Sun Wukong and Tyrion, and they have all kinds of like parallels and things that they do the same. Like there's this mythological character is heavily influencing the Tyrion character. I'm not going to go over it all right now because I didn't have time to prepare all that, but I'll post a link on our podcast page to an episode of another podcast called The Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire, and he goes over all of the Tyrion connections to Sun Wukong, and it's mind-blowing. It's like super, super wild. It's really book spoilery, though, so don't watch that unless you're ready for book spoilers regarding Tyrion, but that's really interesting stuff. Sun Wukong.
I'd like to listen to that.
Yeah, I'll post it. It's so cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's that. Let's see what else I got. I thought it was funny, like the whole Theon scene when he's like, "I'm your captain," and they're like, "Yeah, sure," and they leave him on the shore. And Dagmar Cleftjaw shows up and basically tells Theon, like, you're following the orders of Balon. He's like, "These guys are all real Ironborn. Do they follow orders, or do they do what they want to do?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah. And then he basically tells Theon what to do. And so Theon thinks that he's doing what he wants to do, but instead he just goes from doing what Balon wants him to do to what Dagmar wants him to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is hilarious. And
poor Theon.
Yeah.
He's everyone's puppet.
Yeah, totally. It's brutal. And so there's this one guy, the guy who like kind of tells Theon off. He's like, "I've been reaving and raping since before you left Balon's balls, Captain." And I'm like, these Ironborn are the worst. Just like their ideology is just so crooked,
Agreed.
Yeah, so every time, anytime they're talking, I'm just like, these people are horrible. So that was cool. I thought Tywin had sort of a telling scene when he was describing Robb and saying how Robb's not going to fail, not without our help. Like, they need to be clever and figure something out. This is like sort of what leads to the Red Wedding plot.
Right.
Is like this exploring different trains of thought for coming at Robb because he's been so successful with military strategy, and it's pretty impressive to be able to outwit Tywin in the manner that he has thus far. And Tywin is not happy about it. And
the only way that Tywin can get him killed is to cheat it.
Right,
they cheated that.
Yeah,
that was a complete dick move.
And you can tell that this is like really bothering Tywin too, because as his cousin said, they'd been up all night discussing this. Mm-hmm. Like they have been up and like working hard to figure out how to combat Robb. So this is like a serious threat, and Tywin is taking it seriously, and that says a lot. Like that means that Robb is a serious force to be contended with, which is sort of significant.
Even though he doesn't want to be king.
Yeah, it's so funny. He's just so pissed off. And I like. We get to see Arya interacting with Jaqen this episode, and she sneaks up, and a girl says nothing, like, "Keep your mouth shut, shh, like, don't scream." He's basically saying, a girl keeps her mouth closed. No one hears, and friends may talk in secret, yes. A boy becomes a girl. And she's like, "I was always a girl."
He's like, a man always knew.
Yeah, and I was always aware. A girl keeps secrets. It is not for a man to spoil them. Jaqen is fucking cool, man.
I love him.
He's
I
so
love
slick.
him so much.
He's just he's such a smooth operator. And so she's like, "You're one of them now," and he points out that you're pouring water for them. Like, what's the difference? We both had a choice. We both are surviving. And he then goes on to say, a man pays his debts, and that's when he said that, the red god takes what is his,
right,
girl, and only death can pay for life. You stole 3 deaths from the red god. We have to give them back. And it cuts to a shot of Arya that's sort of like a third person shot from sort of next to Jaqen, and it shows Arya reacting, and she looks terrified. Her hair is like dangling over her eyes, and she's like wide-eyed and sort of like shaken. She's like, you can hear her breath as she thinks that like the red god is going to collect with her life or something. And he goes to say, "Speak 3 names, and a man will do the rest. 3 lives I will give you, no more, no less, and we're done." And she's just like, "What the fuck?" And then at the end of the episode, obviously the tickler tumbles from the battlement with his head spun around backwards like the Exorcist girl, and Jaqen's just like, points one finger up to his eye. "That's one,"
Yeah. Well, and that was like a total test for her, She's like, "All right, you say you could do it? Here, kill this guy."
Right. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it like that. She was like, "Prove it,"
Because that wouldn't have been her first pick if she had really thought that he was for real.
Yeah. Potentially, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. She could have been like Tywin or
Joffrey.
Cersei. Yeah, Joffrey. Ilan Payne, the Mountain, Tywin, Cersei, Joffrey, the Tickler, Polliver.
I have a list. Would you like to see it?
Yeah. You can only pick 3 of them, though. I love how she ends up manipulating him into killing more than 3 people, too, which is pretty badass. she outwits the god of death repeatedly.
Oh, yeah. In more ways than one.
Yeah, so sick. Like I said earlier, cheating with the cat too, and then escaping the order of the House of Black and White. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Arya is she outwits the god of death, man. How many times can you possibly do that? Oh, I liked. We talked a little bit about it, but the Night's Watch is trudging northward, and Jon is talking with Jeor about Qyburn, who ends up showing up. And it's sort of like a passing moment, but Sam is walking by and he's like, "It's beautiful up here. Gilly would love it." Like he's fucking rambling about Gilly, like he's gonna be busted, you know. Like everybody knows, like that you're like head over heels for this girl. You just took your vows, man. You know, and it just shows again how little of a fuck Sam gives. He's just a habitual line stepper, right?
I love him.
As Dave Chappelle, or as Charlie Murphy said. So they're setting up shop at the Fist of the First Men, which is really significant location, really cool. See, what happens there, the craziness. And they're like talking, what do you think they were like, the First Men? And Loras said, it's like, stupid. Smart men don't find themselves in places like this. And Jon's like, they were afraid. They were running from something. And then they hear a blast, and so we get a little bit of explaining to the audience here what the significance of the blasts is again. So we learn, Sam and they all refresh for us again. 1 blast means Rangers returning, 2 blasts for wildlings, 3 for White Walkers.
3 for White Walkers.
Yeah, and it's
been
used
in 1,000 years, but it's 3 for White Walkers.
And so it sets up that ominous, like those moments in the future when they hear a horn blast and they're north of the wall. And they're like, oh, 1 blast, Rangers. And then they hear a 2nd blast, and they're like, fuck, wildlings, we gotta hurry up. And then a 3rd blast, and they're like, oh my god, White Walkers, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
We're losing our fucking minds.
Yeah, and Loras said, and Gren, like, abandons Sam, who's left to face the White Walkers alone, and that one just, like, looks right at him and points forward and screams, and why don't they kill him there? It's crazy.
I know, I can't wait to get to that episode.
Yeah, totally. So we get to see Dany with her Dracarys training with Drogon, which is pretty cool. And Drogon squeaks a little and then roasts his meat, and she's like, they'll be able to eat on their own soon enough. They'll be roasting villagers all day. It'll be wonderful.
They're going to kill off the Tarly line.
Yeah. Toasted Tarleys.
Wait till you see what I can do with this dragon.
Right. And so Doria gives her the dress, and Jiqui, or whoever the other handmaiden is, the non-Doria handmaiden, seems like she's not stoked with Doria for some reason. And she...
Probably because she knows she's a giant fake.
Yeah, which we end up finding out shortly. But this was sort of a little foreshadowing with, like a little tension being built up towards Doria here with the other handmaiden. Because as we know, Doria ends up being locked in the safe with Zaro, right?
Great moment. Yeah. Well, when
I'm sorry, Khaleesi.
You're like, yeah, you should have thought about that before you fucked with me.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
Yeah, that's a terrible death.
Yeah, suffocating or starving, whichever comes first in that safe. Probably suffocating, I imagine. So yeah, she points out I thought it was a good point from the other handmaiden, Jiqui, probably to say, you should wear the dress because it would be rude not to, and hard to argue with that. They're hosts and whatnot. So they're in the feast or whatever, and Dany looks over and sees the 2 Dothraki guys like touching the statue, and she's like, what the fuck is going on over here? And Jorah is so funny here. Malako says the statue is too heavy to carry. The other guy says Malako is an idiot and they can pry off the gems and rubies and cut off pieces that they can carry. And Dany has to explain to them that stealing is wrong, guys, This is not what we do. Yeah, this is not what we do. We don't do that. We don't we don't steal little children, especially not from people who save us and take us into their homes. So that was pretty funny. And they're like storm off, kind of like, fine.
It was
fine,
like she
Mom.
was disciplining her children at a party.
Yeah, exactly. And, everybody ends up calling her Misa too, right? So she is the mother,
yeah.
Which is so funny. So there's an interesting conversation where she says that her brother says that used to say that the only thing that Dothraki are good at is stealing things that better men have built. And Jorah says, that's not the only thing. They're also good at killing the better men, right? And I like Dany's response to that. That's not the type of queen I'm going to be. So that's cool, foreshadowing her, positive morality. I think it was later in the episode where, it was later when Jorah reaffirms that goal by saying that you deserve to rule. People like you don't come around all that often, which helps motivate her in a positive direction, which is good.
Yeah, her character is very much shaped by her experiences in Essos, and she
by her advisors.
Learns exactly who she wants to be and who she does not want to be.
Right.
And Jorah is a big part of that as well. Which
I love how Jikwi or someone says, you'll listen to advisors, and if none of those solutions are right, you'll come up with the solution. You'll do what's best no matter what. Like, if they don't have the right answers, you'll figure it out. Like, yeah, I love it. Then Pyat Pri shows up with his lips all stained from the shade of the evening, and his teeth, all
so
stained
creepy.
from the hallucinogenic flower that they ingest regularly, that the warlocks do at the House of the Undying. And he multiplies himself, and he's like, look into the crystal, Dany. Look into the stone. And I'm like, fuck, don't look, he's going to hypnotize you, or something.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. Just walk
away. He's too weird. And he is creepy looking. So multiplies himself. And
cast him so perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. Great casting.
I'm immediately, uneasy when I see evil.
Him. Yeah. And then all the guests applaud after he multiplies and does this magical thing. And Xaro is convinced that, they drink the shade of the evening and think that their parlor tricks are magic. But it turns out that since the dragons are born, their magic is actually magic, and they no longer need the parlor tricks as much. The same thing is happening with Melisandre and with red priests and priestesses in Volantis, etc., as we learn when Tyrion is, going through the city with Jorah, I believe. That magic is returning with the dragons, it seems.
So cool.
Yeah, so then we see Quaithe, which we talked about, but she says, I'm no one, which is super significant, and I have in my notes, is Quaithe a faceless person? And so that's pretty cool. Then we get Rickon smashing nuts as a resident asks for help to guard his flock, and Bran sends two orphan boys to watch the flock.
Orphan boys.
Yeah, and those are the two kids. One of our listeners pointed this out. We'll get to that in the feedback, but these are the two boys who later die. Mm-hmm. When Theon crisps them and tars them and everything. And they discover, they're informed that Torrhen Square is under siege, and I imagine this is named after Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt, or some Torrhen, one of the Torrhen Starks. And here we have a sort of Ned Stark-esque event as Honor ends up doing in the Starks yet again, as Bran says, we can, one of the guys says we can round up 200 men to go help with the siege at Torrhen Square, and Bran says, if we can't protect our own bannermen, why should they protect us? It does the noble, honorable thing and sends the men to Torrhen Stark, to Torrhen Square. I keep saying Torrhen Stark, but then it turns out that Torrhen Square was a diversion
so that they could take Winterfell. So doing the honorable thing ends up doing in the Starks again, as Bran does the honorable thing, just as Ned always does, and it ends up getting him almost killed, or getting him publicly killed where everybody thinks he's dead, and Winterfell burns because of it. But he did the right thing, so it showed great courage as a leader, and gives us insight into Bran's character, which is good. He seems like a good guy, and I wonder how being the computer brain in season 6 and 7 will affect that. It seems to almost have dissociated him from the concept of morality, as he just becomes an observer, a timeless entity. It's kind of wild.
like whatever happens type thing. We'll have to see how his morality is affected by merging with the werewood network, essentially. But it cuts to Bran talking with Asha about the three-eyed raven, which I thought was pretty interesting. And he asks her, what do they say about the three-eyed raven north of the wall? And she doesn't give him a straight answer. She says, they say all sorts of crazy things north of the wall. And so I'm wondering, I wonder what kind of crazy things those are. Why doesn't she want to tell him? And then it turns out that Bran had his dream that Winterfell was, flooded by the ocean.
By the sea.
Yeah, which obviously is prophetic and symbolic for it being captured by the Iron Islanders,
right.
In the near future. And then then my last note is just about Arya watching Gendry as he's smithing. And she's so funny. He pulls off the sword and I'm sure most of the women watching are like, oh my God, Gendry's shirtless. Arya is just oblivious, not even thinking about Gendry like that or at all. She's just like, you should stand side face. You're using the wrong technique. She doesn't give a fuck.
I'm practicing. If you're gonna practice, then practice for a fight.
Yeah, you want to practice like you're gonna perform. Yeah. So that's a great point. Always give it 110%. And that's pretty much covers it for my notes. Anything else you want to mention?
No, I'm good.
All right, we will be right back with the news.
Diddle-a-doo, diddle-a-doo, diddle-a-doo.
And we're back with news about Game of Thrones. Our first item is an article from WatchersOnTheWall.com. Game of Thrones holds its record as the most torrented TV show with Season 7. Official Game of Thrones viewership figures keep climbing year after year, with Season 7 smashing through the show's previous records, getting an average of more than 10 million people watching the show on HBO's first airing, but many more people are watching through repeated airings, online services, international broadcasters, and also through less than legitimate means. More people torrented Season 7 than any previous season, but it goes further than that. Torrent Freak reports that this latest season, Game of Thrones, held on to its title as the most torrented TV show for the 6th year in a row. That is, since Season 2. Despite...
I'm one of them.
Yeah, you are?
Oh,
I don't know if we should admit that. I would have to cut that.
I'm just one of them. When I was just trying to catch up, and I did have HBO, and somebody was very kind and helped me catch up, and I now have an HBO subscription. So
okay, you're legal.
Blah, 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 blah.
Despite its plummeting viewership on AMC, The Walking Dead remains in second place as the most downloaded TV show through BitTorrent. And a new show took the third place on the podium this year, Rick and Morty, which is one of my favorite shows. Love that show. Have you seen it?
Never. I only saw the Walking Dead special that they did.
Oh, Rick and Morty did Walking Dead special?
Did they not do it? What did I watch that had a Walking Dead special?
I don't know. Rick and Morty's awesome, though. You got to watch that. It's super good.
That has Pickle Rick, right?
I'm Pickle Rick! Yeah. Come on, Morty! Yeah, you definitely got to watch Rick and Morty. It's so good. It's like easily my top 5 favorite cartoons.
I like that you have a cartoon category.
I will. There's so many TV shows that, it's hard to crack the top 5, but I wanted it to crack the top 5 in something, so I don't really have like a cartoon list or anything. But I mean,
Beavis
South
and
Park's
Butthead,
up there,
Simpsons.
Yeah, I think I like Rick and Morty more than The Simpsons. But yeah,
Huh.
it's
Okay.
like cool science stuff, you know? According to Torrent Freak, the highest number of people actively sharing an episode across several torrents was 400,000 at its peak, right after the season finale came online. This is not surprising, as the first airing of the finale broke a record on HBO as well. It was watched on more than 12 million screens across the United States. That's huge, especially for a paid network. Because, I mean, Walking Dead is like 15 to 17 million, and that's like regular cable, right? So...
their season 7 premiere had 17 million people, I believe.
Right, yeah. So that's 12 million is huge for a paid network like HBO.
17 million people that vowed never to watch it again.
Bad news, Jason.
No, I mean that episode.
Oh, that episode.
Yeah. Not the show.
Of course, these figures only take into account those who downloaded the episodes through BitTorrent. Many used other torrenting or peer-to-peer programs or other avenues altogether, such as direct downloads and streaming. To be honest, it's probably impossible to know just how many people downloaded Season 7. I heard that more than 1 billion torrent downloads occurred for Season 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe
I saw
it.
another article that I was going to use, but I already had this one, so I figured we'd just do that, and I'd mention the 1 billion. That's huge.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I definitely believe
too.
it. You know, because a lot of people, even if they do watch the show, you know, legally, I could see people trying to just get it so that they could put on a flash drive and just watch it while they're on a plane or something like that, because you can't download episodes on HBO like you can with Amazon Prime and Netflix and all of them. Like, you can download episodes of content and then you could watch it when you're offline somewhere else. So
Right.
there's something to be said for
Yeah,
that.
it's
I mean,
badass.
if HBO could catch up with the times and, you know, give you the option of downloading some episodes that you could watch when you're traveling or stuck in a waiting room or something, you know, maybe they'll have less illegal downloads.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe that would be a pretty cool option for sure.
Article from Floor 8. Maisie Williams' boyfriend got the perfect Game of Thrones question in Trivial Pursuit. I like this one.
Yeah, I thought this was funny.
Playing the board game Trivial Pursuit with your significant other can be fun. When your significant other is an answer to one of the game's questions, it can be a little scary. When she is also capable of stabbing your eyes out and wearing your face, it gets downright dangerous.
Stabbing your eyes out.
I like that.
Yeah.
Maisie Williams was playing the trivia game with boyfriend Ollie Jackson. A question came up that put the poor guy in a precarious position. Get it right, and the game continues on as normal. Get it wrong, and that could mean the end of the relationship. The question, in Game of Thrones, what is the name of the tomboy daughter of Ned and Catelyn Stark? Okay, that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
He better get this one right, Williams captioned the image along with a sword emoji. There might not be an official needle emoji, but the one she used looks close enough. You could definitely take someone's face with that thing. Williams never explicitly said what answer Jackson gave, but since he is still alive, we can reasonably assume that he got it right. Bullet, well, more like blade, dodged there. That was cute. I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. We're going to mix it up a little bit this week and do a sort of Decoding Thrones section here where we cover an aspect of Game of Thrones that has a historical or mythological background to it from our real world. So I think that's going to become a more prevalent part of this show moving ahead, hopefully. And give us some feedback. Let us know if you guys like that idea. Our next item is an editorial from winteriscoming.net. Game of Thrones as myth. Qyburn as the archetypal shadow. In this series, we take a fast and fun look at Game of Thrones characters and what traditional archetypes they fall into. What is an archetype? In fantasy and myth, certain types of characters constantly appear. Stalwart heroes, odd mentors offering talismans, threshold guardians and their tests, dangerous shapeshifters, otherworldly shadows, dark villains, sly tricksters, and more. As you scan the above list, you can probably drop some Game of Thrones characters into one category or another, or even into multiple categories.
Yep.
In describing these common character types, symbols, and relationships, the Swiss psychologist Carl G. Jung employed the term archetypes, meaning ancient terms of personality that are shared heritage of the human race. That's a quote from Christopher Vogler. Campbell argues that human beings are biologically hardwired to understand the symbolism and expression of character archetypes. Otherwise, we would be incapable of participating in the shared human experience of storytelling. As we segue into Game of Thrones characters, it's important to remember that the archetype is not a straitjacketed category, but rather a flexible function of storytelling. Any individual character can and usually does express various archetypal traits or even moves from one category to another as the story unfolds. This time we dig into the mysterious and sinister character of Qyburn, the disgraced maester who quickly forms an alliance with Cersei Lannister. Qyburn performs a number of archetypal functions such as mentor and mad scientist, but his primary archetypal role is that of the Shadow. The archetype, known as the Shadow, represents the energy of the dark side, the unexpressed, unrealized, or rejected aspects of something. Often, it's the home of the suppressed monsters of our inner world. Christopher Vogler. Qyburn's intellectual curiosity regarding subjects considered unnatural and taboo has resulted in the revocation of his maester's chain by the Citadel. They found some of my experiments too bold, he explains in Kissed by Fire, Season 3, Episode 5. Qyburn is uninhibited by ethics or rules. This leaves him free to harness the powers of the darkness, to perform good deeds, or at least deeds Qyburn himself deems necessary.
The psychological function of the Shadow. As we've seen, the character of Qyburn operates less as a reflection of Cersei and more as a manifestation of her own shadow inclinations. Cersei is a bitter, angry person who needs a hand grenade to throw, and Qyburn both constructs and throws the hand grenade for her. As Vogler states, the Shadow can represent the power of repressed feelings. Deep trauma or guilt can fester when exiled into the darkness of the unconscious, and emotions hidden or denied can turn into something monstrous that wants to destroy us. This energy can be powerful with an internal force of its own and its own set of interests and priorities. Shadows often appear in stories as destructive and frightening creatures like vampires, murderers, and dragons. The merging of Cersei with the manifestation of her dark side, Qyburn, results in the creation of the abomination, the reanimated Ser Gregor. Like Victor Frankenstein, Qyburn explores taboo science in order to study and cheat death, and the resulting monster can be considered a child born of the Cersei-Qyburn union. Interesting.
Right, cool, right? Dramatic function of the Shadow. One of the dramatic functions of the Shadow is to challenge the hero, but the Shadow can also erupt out of the unsavory catacombs of a character's unconscious and, if not properly thwarted, take control. Christopher Vogler says, when the protagonist is crippled by doubts or guilt, or acts in self-destructive ways, expresses a death wish, gets carried away with his or her success, abuses his or her power, or becomes selfish rather than self-sacrificing, the Shadow has overtaken him or her. Cersei has long been overtaken by her own shadow, but she lacked the power to transform her dark impulses into action. Qyburn provides Cersei with the ability to act according to her shadow side's most murderous desires.
That's interesting because should we read the rest of this and then talk about this, or should we talk about this now?
We can talk about it now if you want, sure.
Well, I just that just made me think of maybe the moment where this happened for her was when she had to do her walk of shame, and she walks into the Red Keep and she sees that she has Qyburn and Ser Gregor on her side, and you can see that she has been overtaken by that shadow.
Yeah.
You know, she gets that resolve and determination and that vengeance just in her eyes, like almost immediately.
You're right, too, because the manifestation, the creation of Ser Gregor represents that, and that's also the first scene that he appears.
Oh, cool.
You nailed it. Good job.
Okay, so Mask of the Shadow. The Shadow can and often does wear the masks of other archetypes. Qyburn tried and failed to become a normal maester, but what he truly wanted was a platform where he can indulge his obsession with unnatural human experiments. But Qyburn is also able to apply his immense knowledge to heal people and, quote, save many lives. Qyburn's former profession as a respected maester is akin to the mask used by Hannibal Lecter, whose day job as an esteemed psychiatrist hid the cannibalistic monster within. Hannibal also did some good by harnessing his genius and knowledge of his own affliction to help Agent Clarice Starling capture another serial killer in the Silence of the Lambs, thus saving lives.
It puts the lotion on its skin.
This is the second week in a row that we're referencing this particular movie.
It's awesome. Humanizing the shadow. Shadows are better served in stories when they have depth and display a few positive qualities, such as kindness or perseverance. Qyburn, like all interesting characters, is not all bad, or at least one can argue he isn't all bad. He saves what is left of Jaime's arm, assists the little birds and their families, and eventually protects Cersei from the High Sparrow.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
conclusion.
definitely.
The end of Season 6 left us with Qyburn as Master of Whispers and Hand of the Queen, crowning Cersei as she took the Iron Throne. They have become an inseparable team, both of them now more powerful than they have ever been before. Cersei has equipped Qyburn with the tools and influence to act according to her wishes and pursue his dark science to the maximum. Functioning as the Shadow, Qyburn, with his great intellect, obsession, and amoral practicality, turns Cersei into a far more deadly and effective player in the Great Game. Qyburn, like all characters, is the hero of his own story. Now that he has been unleashed and empowered by Cersei, Christopher Vogler sounds a warning. Beware the man who believes the end justifies the means.
Tywin is another good example of the Machiavellian ends justifies the means character in this story. And there's one more little thing that it was in this article that I thought was funny. They had like a list of traits of Qyburn with like characteristics and whatnot, and they have greatest mystery. And it said, how does Qyburn reanimate Sir Gregor? He does a better job than Mirri Maz Duur with Drogo, but worse than Melisandre with Jon Snow. And I thought that was just a funny little way to compare the effectiveness of the resurrections.
That's interesting because, we talked about earlier when we were talking about the warlocks at Qarth, and you said that you had mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think back to it for a second.
Oh, sure.
You had mentioned that magic had come back into the world with the birth of the dragons.
Right.
And so their powers were coming back and they didn't have to do their parlor tricks anymore. And so what's interesting here is that, Qyburn did reanimate Ser Gregor, in a time where magic had been reanimated itself.
Good
right?
point. Yeah.
Mirri Maz Duur tried to reanimate Drogo before that magic had come back. So I'm wondering how much of that has to do with it all.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Good call. Good
great article, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I thought it was a good
You could
find.
really dig into this and I feel like you and I, if we just kicked back and talked about just this whole concept, we could probably sit here for another half hour.
Yeah, I think we should incorporate more of this type of stuff into the podcast in the future and get
I agree.
Start decoding the mythology of the series and mentioning the real life parallels and stuff like that.
I'd love that.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Once we get a date or a season of when it's coming back in 2019, we can start maybe having special episodes like that in between the rewatch to kind of space it out a little bit.
Yeah, make sure we finish at right about the right time. That's a good idea.
Because I like the idea. A listener also mentioned that they loved our top 5 that we did last week.
Right, the top 5 most shocking moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that listener also, I cannot believe that we forgot the Hodor episode. Both of us.
Yeah, and then we've also forgot the death of Jon Snow and a couple other things that another listener pointed out. Melisandre taking off the necklace. Oh, really?
Yeah. Somebody that I
sucks.
know got really super drunk and told me that happened. Before I read it, before I saw it, before any of it.
The bastard.
Busted.
Throw him from the wall.
Ollie! Ollie!
Ollie!
Ollie!
For the watch!
We can laugh now because he's okay.
Or is he?
Yeah, does he have a heartbeat? Yeah, but it would be fun. It would be fun to do like those top 5 moments, get a guest on, have everybody kind of talk about maybe like most despicable characters, or, you know, maybe we could even have like a vote on our page to see like what kind of categories people would want to see covered.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, and we could have people send in voicemails with their top 5 or their top whatever, and get as much feedback as we can.
We play it throughout the episode so that it's not all at the end, so that we can talk about it afterwards. That'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we can do. Yeah, we'll figure out some cool ideas for stuff like that. Look
at us brainstorming.
Yeah, we'll cover some stuff like theories too, like
best and worst theories of how this story will end. Yeah,
or maybe we'll do some like book episodes too, where we cover like secret identities in the books, like who is like Jack and Hagar at the end. What's he doing? Who is Septa Lemore? Stuff like that.
I love that.
There's all kinds of sorts of cool speculation. Yeah, definitely.
You and I will be. What's higher than a doctor? What's higher than a PhD? Is there higher than a PhD?
A Tesla, yeah.
Archmaester. Grand Archmaester.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Maesterette.
If Maester is like Mister, then Maces.
Maces? Yeah, that
like
sounds
Mrs.
good.
Mrs. Maces.
Maces. Maces Kristin.
Maces Kristin. Archmaces Kristin.
Archmaces Kristin. That's why there's no women maesters. They couldn't think of it.
I couldn't think of any good names for it. Yeah, you guys got the shaft.
Literally.
Oh yeah, for people that are interested in this type of stuff, I posted a link to the winteriscoming.net, where they have a whole bunch of articles like this covering various aspects or characters compared to various aspects of mythological archetypes, like a whole thing about Dany and the hero's journey, or Tyrion and the anti-hero's journey. Or
do you want to cover one each week?
Yeah, we could do this. Yeah, we could do that. That'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Yeah, definitely good idea. We shall. But yeah, that's all up on the Game of Microphones Facebook page right now. So if you guys want to go dive into that, you can go to that winteriscoming.net link that I posted and explore all those articles and comparisons for yourself.
Cool, man.
Boom.
Got some good stuff on that Facebook page.
Yeah. So we will be right back with Raven's Calls. Moo.
Angelica Garcia Decker says, I still hate this Renly death so much. Touching on the question from my last week about why the Starks would want Renly versus Stannis, I think it's because of how Stannis gives no wiggle room and would not be down with the king in the North situation. Renly was all for it. He was desperate to be Robert and saw Robb as his Ned Stark partner in crime. In my opinion, anyway. I think that's valid.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Lancel telling Tyrion about the wildfire, his eyes get really wide, just like right before it kills him later on. Oh, that's true. That's very
fucking
true.
Great. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Our introduction to wildfire is through Lancel, and it ends up killing him. That's amazing.
Yeah, I like that circle.
Good call, Angelica. Yeah, that's awesome. Classic.
Theon is the most annoying ever. His smug face when he realizes he wants Winterfell is just such horseshit. I love the Dothraki dudes about to pull a party foul. Dany talking to the lady and then eyeing them up is me when I'm at a birthday party with my 3-year-old. Me too, Angie.
Yeah,
me
exactly.
Too.
That's classic. Thanks for writing in, Angie. Gigi Lugo says, Hi, Duncan and Kristin.
Hello.
First time getting a chance to submit feedback, so this might be a lot, but I'm stoked. I'm still shocked by Renly's death via Shadow Baby with Stannis' face, as Brienne says. It happened so fast and just bam, stabbed in the heart by a shadow. LOL. Yeah, that was crazy. Shocker.
Mm-hmm.
Brienne of Tarth is so badass, killing the guards who said she was going to die because they thought she killed Renly. Totally. Mm-hmm. She just cut him down like Barristan Selmy, like like a hot knife through butter.
Amazing.
2 quotes regarding Renly's death stuck out to me. You can't avenge him if you're dead, Cat to Brienne, and you can't avenge him from the grave, Marjorie to Loras. Yeah, good.
Very much.
We mentioned both those, but we didn't make that connection. Good call. I love this conversation with Marjorie and Littlefinger. If Renly wasn't a king, then I wasn't a queen. Do you want to be a queen? No, I want to be the queen. It's the only time you'll ever hear me say that. Ser Duncan, I mean. Wanting to be the queen.
Sorry.
That's all right. Lancel telling Tyrion about the wildfire and Tyrion threatening Lancel about telling Jaime he's been seeing Cersei. Also, Tyrion telling Lancel to tell Bronn that if he dies to kill Lancel, then he does it as Tyrion pushes him out of the fancy box.
I like fancy box.
Emoji.
Yeah, I think we should call it fancy box now.
The fancy box. I was surprised that Tywin didn't recognize Arya, but I supposed he never met her before. But he does quiz her on where she's from and asks her about Robb, which breaks my heart. She mentions warging and that anyone can be killed, obviously thinking of Ned. Love the stare between her and Tywin. Agreed. Dany and Drogon, too freaking cute. Doria and Irri. Okay, so it's Irri, not Jiqui. I like that Dany points out that she's not interested in the money, and that the last time a man gifted her a dress, he sold her to Khal Drogo. Irri corrects Doria. Dany is not a princess, she's a Khaleesi. Right. Yeah, we got that good moment where Irri sort of snapped at Doria and said, she's not a princess, she's a Khaleesi.
Yeah, they clearly don't like each other.
Yeah. They've clashed about ideologies before as well. Remember in the conversation about the moon cracking and the dragons coming out, and Irri is saying that, and Doria kind of was like blowing it off, like, yeah, sure, Dothraki savage, you know. Back to our message. Creepy warlock is so bizarre. That is also true. It's so bizarre. Who is the woman who walks up to Jorah?
Bizarre.
Is she a faceless woman? I was wondering the same thing. When he asks who is she, and she says no one, yet she knows exactly who he is. We forgot to mention that. Yeah, she knows exactly who Jorah is. Maybe because of her, maybe from her glass candle capabilities, like, or something.
Yeah, that's a nice catch.
She also says fire is power. Yeah, really good catch. She says fire is power, and she says, I don't know what that is supposed to mean, but I feel like it's important, LOL. Yeah, and we were sort of speculating about that with the connection between the R'hllor and the many-faced god. So yeah, there seems to be some important connection going on here. I wish Kat would have made it back to Winterfell. Sad, he says, crying. So sad hearing her say she has to get back to take care of her 2 youngest. That's true, we didn't really mention that either. And we can see that they need guidance as Rickon is just smashing all those things. And our listener here says Rickon smashing whatever it is when the farmers are telling Bran about the mountain attacking their livestock on orders from Tywin. Yeah, the kids are out of control, at least Rickon. Most notable point for me that I never noticed before, this is my 3rd rewatch, LOL. Bran says he dreamt of the sea coming to Winterfell. Is that a foreshadow of Theon coming to attack/take Winterfell? He also mentions that Sir Roderick was one of them who were who drowned floating in the water, which foreshadows him being killed by Theon. R.I.P. Good point. We didn't mention that.
Yep.
And that's a good catch.
Yeah, we didn't talk a lot about Winterfell.
Yeah, true. I love when Arya is giving Gendry fighting tips. So cute. I'm excited for their reunion.
Me agree. Too.
Gigi, thanks for writing in.
Matthew Rep says, poor Bran just sent those 2 orphan boys to their deaths by sending them to help that farmer. It's amazing how knowing what's going to happen can make such a small moment in a throwaway scene so meaningful.
Yeah.
Very
true.
much so.
Yeah, Bran just basically sent those kids to their death. It's hardcore. I mean, he doesn't know that. Yeah. Wendy Ott-Eppers says, Cersei and Tyrion have a rare, honest conversation. Tyrion learns that Cersei is making wildfire. Davos makes his feelings about Melisandre clear. Theon gets some crazy notions in his head. I would say Brienne's one of my favorites, but I feel I say that a lot. Love her. She's so interesting.
Agreed. Laura Willie
Yeah.
Swink says, I so love Marjorie.
Marjorie.
She is kind, yet also cunning and ambitious. Proof that you can be powerful and conscientious at the same time.
Yeah. Avelino Rochino says, question. With all of Jaqen Hagar's mad skills of assassination and disguise, how is it that he got captured and put in a cage bound for the north, needing Arya's help to escape? This kind of gnawed at me as I watched Season 2 and then Season 5.
Because he's Syrio. It was on purpose.
Yeah. Wendy replies saying, yes, I thought that must have been purposefully. And Avelino says, yes, you would think it would have to be. Perhaps he followed her all the way after Ned's death. And Laura Willie Swink says, I think it was planned as a test for Arya. I still believe that Jaqen is also Syrio Forel.
Girlfriend,
Yeah.
me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too.
Hashtag me too.
Hashtag me too. Oh, it's a different kind of me too, though. Laura Willie Swink says, Dany has a wild heart. Sometimes it burns with passion, anger, or justice, or love. Sometimes it softens with compassion, like her kindness to the oppressed and less than. I heart her.
Faux show. And my mom used to have a bunny named Me Too when she was like a little kid.
Oh, that's cute.
We have some emails as well. Our first comes from Caroline Collins. Hi, Duncan and Kristin. Thanks for continuing the podcast through the holidays. It's kept me reading, watching, and listening through all the craziness, and I really appreciate it. Here are my thoughts on this week's show. With Renly's death, I realized our characters have no time to grieve for their loved ones. Both Brienne and Loras have to put their mourning on hold to save themselves and make important decisions that will change their future. It pretty much applies to all the characters that experience loss in this show. It really drives home the fact that everyone's security in this world is based on how close they are to their king and or liege lord. And when that authority is taken away, they're left with nothing and are dangerously exposed. Interesting that Jaqen calls the many-faced god the Red God. Everybody seems to be noticing that. I always assumed that he was referring to the Lord of Light, but we've said the Braavosi worship the god of death. Which is it? I'm still not sure. Maybe it will get clearer as we move ahead, but Jon's reincarnation and the Hound's visions have us all believing that R'hllor is definitely a power in this world, for good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yup. It's also said in Old Nan's stories that since Harrenhal was enveloped in flames by Balerion the Dread, fiery ghosts still haunt the castle, and people have been found randomly burned in the night. Not sure if Grimm intended to connect the dragon fire with the symbolic fire of the Lord of Light here in Harrenhal, but it's a cool, or should I say, hot connection either way. I do love Arya and Tywin. Such great chemistry between two amazing characters. Every scene is just electric. I'm almost certain that Tywin has an idea of who Arya is. He definitely knows she's hiding something. I think he wants to give her a chance to prove herself, which is a little out of character. Yeah, see, I'm wondering the same thing. It feels like Book Tywin would just toy with her to get information, then take her captive. Sam says... Yeah. Sam says, I wonder what they were like, of the first men, as the camera slides right to reveal Jon standing, watching the horizon. We know that Jon has blood of the first men through his mother, and he may be Azor Ahai come again. Yeah, I noticed that too, actually, the camera panning over to him in that moment.
Oh.
Kind of cool how they use the camera. Yeah, kind of cool how they use the camera to answer Sam's question. I'm sure the first men were a lot like Jon, and yes, I'm sure they were scared too. Damn straight. Never noticed Dolorous Ed before he became Lord Commander, but he's really funny. That's so funny. You didn't notice him? I love his sarcastic sense of humor, his dolorous sense of humor, you could say. I'm starting to notice he always has something self-deprecating and passive-aggressive to add to the situation. It's like having a long-haired Charlie Brown around. Good grief. That's all for tonight. Happy New Year. Thanks, Caroline.
That was good.
Always good to hear from you. Caroline, like Arbor Wine.
I like it.
Lady Caroline.
From Allison Jehonet. Duncan! Heart. I absolutely love the podcast. Keep up the amazing work. I'm a newer listener who has spent the last 3 weeks catching up on the podcast, and I'd love to share my theory with you. I've been itching for more Game of Thrones. Please send me the first audiobook, ? And this podcast is certainly scratching that itch for me in the meantime. On to my theory. If Dany is the representation of fire and Jon of ice, will he be able to ride the ... ice dragon? Is this a silly question? I would love to hear your thoughts, and I hope this sparks some good conversation. Thank you so much. Your new loyal listener, Allison. Smiley face.
That's a crazy idea. What do you think?
I think it would mean that Jon would have to die, unless he is technically dead.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead, right? He's a fire white.
Well, we've wondered if his heart still beats.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Right? Wasn't there something with George talking about the difference between ice whites and fire whites recently? And he basically classified Beric Dondarrion and Jon Snow as fire whites and said that they're whites essentially. They're not like they don't have normal circulation or stuff going on. If I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So it's, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting idea. That'd be That'd be so sick if Jon got like the most powerful dragon and just used it to like wreak havoc on
what would he
on
use
the
it
whites
for?
And whatnot. Shredding the whites, I guess.
With ice? Because it's ice fire, isn't it?
Well, it took down the wall.
That's
right?
true.
It defeated that ice magic. So yeah, I don't know. It's like a combination of ice and fire that, you know, the ice magic with the fire magic, like dragons and the White Walkers combined. And Jon himself is also the personification of the combination of ice and fire with his Targaryen and Stark lineage. So maybe his mix of ice and fire could give him some sort of connection to the dragon now has a mix of ice and fire. So that could line up, theoretically. Everybody's been speculating that he would ride Rhaegal because Rhaegar was his father, but it would make sense for him to have a connection to the dragon of ice and fire since he's the man of ice and fire, sort of, you know? I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the Viserion will probably be killed and will be exclusively ridden by the Night King.
Again.
But it would be interesting. It would be it would be an interesting twist for sure if Jon had the capability to connect with it somehow. Maybe due to his ice and fire heritage and his theoretical connection to the White Walkers genetically by the first Night King potentially being a Stark. Maybe he ends up being able to warg into the ice dragon and have it, you know, buck the Night King off its back or something and submit to Jon. Who knows? I think that, you know, it's going to be bad, though.
That's a very cool train of thought. I don't know. Anything could happen. I honestly believe that anything could happen.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities and ways that things could go.
It's fun to think about.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but I think it's a really cool idea. Mm-hmm. And that dragon is super powerful, so it'd be epic to see Jon
Drogon versus Viserion.
Undead Jon. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's gonna happen, and I'm not happy about it. It's gonna be Viserion and Drogon versus, or Rhaegal and Drogon versus Viserion, and I think Rhaegal's probably gonna die, if not Drogon, before
my heart hurts just thinking about it.
Yeah, especially
I don't like thinking about dead dragons.
The whole Dance of the Dragons war where the Targaryens, you know, turned against themselves and were vying for the throne and a bunch of dragons died. Maybe that's foreshadowing this fight of dragons and you know, some Targaryen dragons dying. I don't know. I'm not feeling positive about these dragons' longevity, though.
Yeah, but that's a bummer because I feel like dragons need to stay. So one of them needs to lay an egg or something.
But are dragons a good thing to be alive, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, selfishly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would not. it'd be hard to advocate the extinction of any species, from a moral standpoint. But there's definitely the capability for a lot of destruction from dragons just simply existing. But that's the way of nature, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Great question. Thanks for writing, Allison.
Yes, thank you.
Glad to hear from you. I hope to hear from you again soon.
Yes, keep writing.
Our next email comes from Lady Liza Irizarry. She says, "Hi, Duncan and Kristin. I'm enjoying so much your rewatch of Game of Thrones. Your comments are right on the money. Your show has enhanced my viewing experience 100%. I agree.
Thank
well,
you.
Not necessarily about us being on the money, but I agree that watching or listening to podcasts really enhances the TV experience.
Yes.
When you have people that you can listen to analyzing it, and basically you're hanging out with friends talking about it, gives you an outlet to go between the episodes, having some deeper thoughts about it.
And you don't have to, ruin friendships by talking obsessively over it.
Right.
With people that don't care.
Yep. So Liz goes on, "Thank you again for such an incredible podcast and everything you do. Happy holidays. With great admiration, Liza Irizarry." Thank you very much, Liza. Good to hear from you.
Liza.
And yeah, I'm not sure. Liza. It's got 2 Z's, so I feel like maybe Liza. That's
Liza,
cool.
like pizza?
Either way,
Litza?
Litza. Yeah. Awesome name. Really cool name. I want to tell us how to pronounce it, though, so we get it right. It's really cool to look at, though.
The next one comes from Jim Hummelstein, Ser Duncan, and Lady Kristin. A recent episode of Radiolab included a several-minute interview with Paula Fairfield, who is the Foley artist for the dragon sounds for Game of Thrones. And he gave the link. So
it's radiolab.org/story/big-little-questions/. So you should check that out. It's going to be really cool, I'm sure.
Yeah, it says Paula starts at around 20 minutes in on the recording. She lists and plays many of the individual sounds she composes, into dragon sounds, including sounds of giant...
it's
composites?
Yeah, composites, yeah. She combines different sounds.
So she lists and plays
cool.
many of the individual sounds that she composites into dragon sounds, including sounds of giant tortoises mating. From Jim in the New Kingdom of Jersey.
It makes me think of that viral video with the turtles mating, and it cuts to Coldplay. It's like, what? You know what I'm talking about?
In what?
It cuts to, it's like that Coldplay video. Or it's like clocks or whatever.
I haven't seen a music video in years.
Ooh, oh. But it cuts to the tortoise going, ooh. It's great. I'll post a link to it on our Facebook page. It's pretty funny.
This sounds perfect.
And our next email, it's Sir Pete's Conspiracy Corner.
Pete's Corner.
Sir Pete of Longwood. "Hey guys, I read somewhere that in the original draft, Jaqen H'ghar had a brother named Sammy, a bard often found singing at House Van Halen, Van Halen, the pyromancer, in the Reach. Sammy H'ghar had a hair of gold that hung to his shoulders in lazy ringlets. He was widely known for his song about Tywin Lannister and the time Tywin was a squire at a tourney and he was told to drive more than 100 horses from the tourney grounds to the stables. Ty can't drive 5 and 50 is sung from Dorne to the Stormlands. And no one could forget his other song about a squire, the time pod called the Kettle Blacks."
Oh my gosh.
but George's editors had him write Jaqen as an only child, and also convinced him to stop writing about Roose Bolton's brother Michael. Michael. Do you guys know if this is true? Love, Sir Pete of Longwood, breaker of wind, smoker of the dank, the somewhat burnt. I don't know, those are new ones to me too. Michael Bolton, Sammy H'ghar.
Sammy H'ghar. You're getting better with your stories, Sir Pete.
Yeah, this is a good one. That's a good one. Thanks, Sir Pete. Awesome. Merry
that's
Christmas
funny.
to you. We have a voicemail from Lady Anwen.
Oh, yay!
It's Anwen here. Just thought I'd call in and give you some feedback from the last episode. And I really wanted to say thank you so much for all the background that you guys give us from the books and all the background stuff. It's really, really helped me to understand and give me so much more depth to each episode. And one thing that really stood out for me this time was Brienne and the background that you gave us, Duncan, about her and why she is so loyal to Renly. It really made me understand more why she was so devastated when he was killed by the smoke monster. And then the other thing, the religions, I had a little look at that clip that you posted, was it you, Kristin? Posted about the religions of Westeros and their different meanings. And so that got me thinking when Jaqen said about the red god, and I thought he followed the many-faced god. So I had a little read on the internet and saw about how the many-faced, the faceless men, they really like to believe that everybody worships death. Every different religion worships death, just under a different name. And so that when he says the red god, he could also be meaning the many-faced god. So I thought that was really interesting.
Right, that's a great point.
And that whole scene with him and Arya was amazing. And I just think it really showed that Arya understood the meaning and the power of death and revenge. You see this look on her face after he kills the tickler, and she just has this look of understanding, and I thought that was such a powerful moment. And the other thing that really struck me about this episode was there was a lot of people sizing each other up. There was a lot of people realising where the person they were talking to was standing, or realising their power. And one of the first ones there was Baelish, or Littlefinger, and Marjorie, and he's just chatting away to her, and he got a little bit of a sense of her last week, but then this time he asks her the question, do you want to be a queen? And she says, no, I want to be the queen. And he looks at her and she looks at him, and they get each other, and that was pretty awesome. Then you have Tywin and Arya. They're sizing each other up. She's pouring his water, and she says to him, anybody can be killed, my lord. And they hold eyes for a moment, and again I think he's getting a sense of her. Then you've got Brienne and Kat. They give each other the oaths, and I think they're realising each other's strength, and that strength can be very different. Just as you were saying last week about people's survival strengths, and Brienne's realised Kat's womanly strength, and Kat realises and honours Brienne's warrior strength, which I thought was very cool. And then the final one, Dany and Jeor, and they have their little exchange, and he says, I sometimes can't believe you're real. And she looks at him, and there's that moment of understanding where she realises his true feelings for her, and the whole dynamic changes from that point. I thought that was a really powerful scene as well. So hopefully this isn't too long and rambling. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
I love her.
Me too. Hear all the tweeting in the background.
Yes.
Too. She was like walking on a nature trail or something. Yeah, down in Hobbit Village in New Zealand. Thanks,
oh my gosh,
Anwen. It's so good to hear from you.
Thank you, Anwen. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Definitely. And she's going to guest with us sometime soon. I told her to pick an episode. So,
yeah.
That'll be fun.
Do it. Do it.
All right. That's our show, episode 57. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to Lisa Moreno and Laura Willie Swink for gathering news and Ravens calls.
Next week, we'll be covering Season 2, Episode 6, The Old Gods and the New. Give it a watch and send us your thoughts. We'd love to read them on air.
Yeah, and thank you also for everybody's feedback, and I've noticed this past week has been really fun on the Facebook page. There's been a lot more activity and some more comments, and we love to interact with you and talk to you, and love getting feedback on the show and what your thoughts are. So thank you so much for continuing to support our podcast by giving us your thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, definitely. And to do that, if you'd like to call, you can always reach us at 813-563-3739. That's 813-JOFFREY.
If you'd like to write in, you can email us at game@podcastica.com.
Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast.
And be sure to check out all of the other great podcasts at podcastica.com. It should be noted that Strange Indeed, as they wrap up their Stranger Things Season 2 podcast, they are going to be moving into the new season of Black Mirror. So if you're a fan of the show, they are gearing up to do that, and I think it's going to be really great.
Nice. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and I know that Jason has recently recorded, I think, the first 2 episodes of the new Westworld podcast as well. So check those out at podcastica.com.
And if you have a second, we'd love if you would give us a like on Facebook or leave us an iTunes rating or review. Might help bump us up in the search results. They actually, since I contacted Apple about the podcast app only showing 8 results per search, they actually changed it. It's like they listened to me, and now when you search for a podcast, all the results come up. So
Yay!
That's good news, and we are now findable when you search for Game of Thrones. So thank you, Apple and iTunes. We appreciate you listening to our feedback and really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
That's our show, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Do you want to be a queen?
No. I want to be the queen.
Dee. Okay. Are you there?
Yep.
Please wait while I get the latest episode of Game of Microphones podcast. And all of a sudden I hear, Ksh, huh? And I'm like, yay!
He's great.
Hail Hydra.
Hail Hydra! Moo.
Bah. Perfect. Cut the check.